Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to what is the start of our journey. We're going to write the first chapter tonight in a brand new storybook because we are kickstarting the Ventauri Pro Series, season number 1. We've had a couple of social races, both of them won by McLarens. Will it be the Papaya Squadron on top once again as we head down under for the first of our 14 races this season across the next 16 or 17 weeks? Can't quite remember, but we'll come back to you on that one. Looking forward to this one. Some of the best in the business. We've got full qualifying as well. 50% race coming up later. Everything you could possibly want is right here for you tonight, as well as my wonderful co-commentator. Once again, Tom Squared infiltrating every commentary box near you and every league near you. Tom Knight TK, how are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well, Tom. It's a pleasure as always to share the commentary box with yourself, and as you rightly said, infiltrating everywhere that we want to be infiltrating. And VPS, Ventauri Pro Series, knows what's up. They've got the best of the best in the box, and all the drivers are knowing that, and I'm really looking forward to getting started.
100%. We've got some cracking races coming up, incredible drivers as well, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat through before we get started with our qualifying session. I think we should start with the drivers that are going to be going at it potentially. As TK gets the button ready, and we're right there already. Firstly, we're missing one of our social race winners. Luca Rapassa is here, but Tudor Pressacan, who won in Zandvoort a couple of weeks ago, is absent. But we've got so many drivers on this list that you will know very, very well. We just have to go through the list. Mercedes, to start off, Gabor Chonstos was competitive. Conrad Bohm, Beisner, Fabrizio Donoso is here, was in the Cadillac a couple of weeks ago, now draping the scarlet of Ferrari. Jack Weston, for the first time, didn't take part in the two social races. Alejandro Luera and Larry Tolucci is back. Stephen Vaz has been pretty competitive, and we have yet to see Francesco Largo as well, which would be an interesting one to look through.
Absolutely. Racing Bulls, Tycho Hardy, Sergio Sobrino. It's Haas line up with both Joris Krozen and Julian Klaffenbach as well. Gabriel Quintino and Alex Santana are partnered up at Williams. Scott Holmes and Marcel Paps alongside each other for the Lean Green Racing Machines. And then the two new boys on the grid is Victor Valda and Joe Murphy lining up at Audi with Tamas Gal and Tamas Kokine in the Cadillac. So all exciting lineups up and down the field. 11 teams getting ready to take to the virtual streets.
Tom Squared in the box, Tamas Squared in Cadillac. We're just doubling up everywhere we go. But from the drivers, we need to have a look at the places that they'll be running shortly, because we've obviously got Australia tonight, but we will be blasting around the globe across all corners, apart from Africa, because there's no African Grand Prix at the moment. South Africa, Kyalami, we see you. Next week, we'll head to China. Then we go to Silverstone and then Austria, the Red Bull Ring Tirana, our first little bunch, our first quartet of races, where we'll just sink our teeth into what could be a fascinating championship battle. Then we go to Suzuka and Spa. What a doubleheader that is, with Bahrain and the Circuit of the Americas to follow. And then quite an interesting 4-race run at the end, splitting it up into thirds. Saudi Arabia at Jeddah, which I haven't seen a league race on so far. I haven't commented on a league race so far, but I imagine that's going to be absolute chaos. Mexico City, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi to round us off. It's a great calendar, and more importantly, TK, it's a calendar where we'll see lots of different skill sets unfold.
Absolutely right. A really nice mix of circuits across the field. We get a little bit of slow speed cornering, a lot of high speed cornering, but actually it will show the weaknesses and elevate those weaknesses that drivers might have. We see it quite traditionally in F1 esports and F1 sim racing, where those drivers do switch out for the rounds where maybe they're a little bit weaker. Obviously, there's no necessary team championship here in VPS, so we will see maybe a little bit of weakness exposed from a few drivers. You also mentioned Jeddah. Very much the same. I haven't seen a league race there in the 2026 regulations yet. It will be interesting to see how our drivers fare when we do start to kick that off a day before I turn 27, which will make me feel very old.
Oh. Wow. Are you really that old?
Unfortunately, yes.
Rounding up to 30. Not to
quite
be that guy, but yes, what an incredible calendar, and what an incredible group of people that are already here. Thank you, everybody, for spending your Monday evening or Monday afternoon or potentially Monday morning, wherever you are on this glorious globe with us. Scaloin is here. Nathan Rich is in the chat. Jensen, I'm assuming that's Jensen Rosen. If you are, good luck for this evening. Will Gibson's here. Nathan, you are very old. And also, Will Gibson has made a very good point. TK, can you make sure that we have the tyres out?
No,
I can't
no
see
tyres. Not in the entirety. You know what? I'll show them in qualifying. How about that? Well, I'll make an exception for that.
We'll have the intermediate tyre challenge. If you know, you know. But let's talk about the circuit first, because Australia, we have 5 straight line modes. This is going to be a real test of the battery. There's not too many heavy braking zones. There will obviously be opportunities for drivers to lift off and use half throttle, whatever recharging technique that they've adopted going into this. But I think this could be like we saw in real life a few months ago, a real exhibit of the flip-flop racing that we've come to know in 2026.
We've seen it in a lot of circuits, actually. The more notable the ones are the longer straights. I saw some fantastic racing out in Spa just a couple of nights ago, but it was that such textbook example of flip-flop racing where drivers were burning the battery to make those moves, then would have to try and spend a sector, if not a little bit less, recharging the battery, and by the time they got to the next long straight, it was pretty much game over. The moves were being made left, right and centre, so we will see probably a lot of that here tonight as well.
And we've started to see the dynamics of pack racing start to unfold as well, because obviously it's critical not to get caught in the pack. But if you are battling too hard, we do see a lot of times you burn your battery to get past someone. Someone retaliates, as you said, burn their battery to get through. Both of you are then flat. Somebody else arrives on the scene. And before you know it, you've lost a second and a half to the group in front. You've lost the blue overtake boost mode. And it's really hard to try and regain that deficit that you've lost.
Absolutely, and it shows as well just how powerful Slipstream is in the 2026 regulations. Again, Codemasters, for once, I think have done actually a relatively decent job at showing the Slipstream abilities with these generations of cars. So much so that it's been banned in qualifying for the majority of those fast leagues, here included. Of course, drivers will have to remain to, I say remain to a delta. There is no set delta, it's just try and leave a gap to the cars in front so you aren't benefiting from that slipstream element. But of course, when we get into that race situation, we will see a lot of that, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We also should mention as well that it is going to be multiplayer cars in our qualifying session as we jump in, so we're not going to be able to tell necessarily from the timing tower who everybody is, and we've got some coloured dots that'll be on the track map that hopefully can try and overlap as best as we possibly can as we head out for qualifying one. Remember, Q1, Q2, Q3 in the offing. Only 21 drivers at the moment. We thought we were going to be having 23, or 23, that would be impossible. 22 drivers taken to the circuit, as I believe that was a McLaren, and that looks to be like an Audi or a Haas potentially with Joris Kroos. I'm going to have to get the driver lineup up on my other screen as we go through this. But qualifying, TK, when we're looking at how you approach around a circuit like this, is it the place where you've got to try and build up your speed, or because it's a rhythm circuit, you really just got to try and throw it into the high-speed corners and find where that limit is as soon as possible?
Those first two sectors really are ones where you've just got to find a rhythm to it. The opening couple of chicanes, you want to try and find your flow because any compromise will really hold you back as you get into that second sector, which is, barring maybe one tight corner, is flat out all the way down to turns 9 and turns 10. And then sector 3 is that more kind of technical element of this circuit. You have to be cautious on your throttle application. You have to be cautious when you get that power down, when you burn the battery. And so many times coming out of turn 14, the final corner here in Australia, we will see drivers maybe starting to find a little bit of slip and rear end with the car. As we're watching Jack West, I was going to praise him for a minute for some amazing drifting through what would have been turns 11, and then they hit the wall. So no praise from me, Jack.
You don't get a lot of downforce with these new front wings, and you're going to have even less there. Going for the intermediate tyre on a was before we return tail between our legs into the pit lane, and what I can assume is going to be a McLaren with the orange paintwork on that multiplayer car. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because the intermediate tyres, you might look at that and go, why are you using inters? It's completely dry. And yes, we're having a lobby reset as well between qualifying and the race, but you don't have that many soft compound tyres. You've only got a finite number, 3 or 4, depending on what tyre allocation you choose. So you do have to be careful as Klaffenborg, big slap of oversteer through turn number 1. Car not biting to his inputs, goes off the circuit, but doesn't have that lap time invalidated.
Somehow, very fortunately, not gaining maybe as much time as the game was anticipating they do so, but through the second sector, sorry, into the first sector they'll go. That's very wide, and that will be an invalidation for Julian Klaffenbach, so does not make it out of the first sector this time around. Just behind them, Lucas Beisner, who will be second on the road, although be at first now, setting what will be the purple first sector, 28.226 on a set of the intermediate compound of tyres.
Beisner representing Ferrari as we see the flash of not quite scarlet, closer to crimson, you would say, as we go through what used to be known as turns 9 and 10. They've now just been eradicated from the track map. We're going to treat this, I would almost say, infamous high-speed chicane now of 9 and 10. Throw the car in. The curbs can be a little bit aggressive. Nice rotation, actually, not too much understeer on those intermediate tyres as we plough down into turn number 11. Got to be careful of the sausage curb, the reared up sausage curb right at the apex there, and try and get on the power as soon as you possibly can. At this stage, though, those intermediate tyres will be screaming for a little bit of mercy, running wide through turn 12, just about keeping it within the white lines. Couple of corners left to negotiate, no more braking zones, but the traction out of 14 can be quite challenging. You can see there, lively with the loud pedal is Beisner. We're going to be pulling gears up to the line, and the benchmark on the intermediates is a 121.2.
Absolutely. Keeping an eye on Marcel Pamps just behind, going purple in the second sector. That's immediately be taken away by Luca Rapassa as well. So keep an eye on both of those drivers. As we see Paps up towards the line then to try and take away the opening honours from Lucas. They'll cross the line. They can't quite do it on this occasion. Behind them, Rapassa trying to navigate that tricky final sector as well. The orange, this is almost certainly the McLaren car of Luca Rapassa. Beautiful through turn 14 and up towards the line. They will run to try and go fastest. They do go fastest. A 1:20.822, putting themselves just 4.6 tenths ahead of their closest competition.
Decent chunk of time that to find, albeit on the intermediate tyres. You expect, because the skill gap and the difficulty is just slightly increased because it's not optimal conditions, that we will be seeing a slightly more spread out field for the drivers that have gone for that intermediate tyre run. A lot of drivers still in the pit lane, yet to emerge on the circuit. Klaffenborg out there, Gabriel Contino out there on the intermediates, as is Alejandro Luera down right at the bottom there. As we pick up Klaffenborg, lucky not to exceed track limits there on the exit of turn number 12, running what I can't really tell. It's a white car as he's going to return to the pits. That is the Haas of Julian Klaffenborg into the pit lane. Second attempt on those tyres, not quite at the pace required.
Same story for Alejandro as well. Not necessarily the fastest first sector, but consistent across the board. They're about a second off the pace in the second sector. And there we go, into pit road then at the end of that lap. We are expecting, of course, drivers to start putting in their first runs in the next few moments, but we have this kind of lull moment here within sim racing where drivers don't want to go out too early. They don't want to burn up a set of tyres when the track hasn't ramped up. So that is the sort of waiting time that we're going to experience here for the next few moments. But whilst we have this, why don't you let us know who in chat you might be supporting, or alternatively, if you want to cause a little bit of chaos, who you think might be going out in Q1 here.
Remember, with 22 or 21 cars at the moment on the grid, 5 at the moment. We'll go out in the first part of qualifying, then we'll lose another 6 in Q2, and then our top 10 shootout. But you know this by now. We've had this qualifying format for 20 years now. That's crazy to say. 2006, the first time the knockout format was brought in. They tried to change it 10 years ago in 16. It was absolutely terrible. And to be honest, I don't think they should ever change it. It's the best way, isn't it, this qualifying format that we've got?
Arguably, I really like the qualifying that we have in Formula 1. I think it is a nice balance of the good, the bad, and the ugly formats of qualifying that we see up and down the motorsport pyramid. So, you know what? As much as we give F1 probably a lot of grief for various things that do go on, I think they've hit qualifying pretty damn well, especially as we headed into the 22-car grids, the 6 being knocked out in both Q1 and Q2. They could have done it a bit of a bookie way. They chose not to, and there's respect for that there.
100%. And while we have got this little bit of a lull as well, let's have a bit of a moment just to talk about the potential prizes that you're going to get for competing in this league. Massive thanks to Sim Racing Centre, firstly, SRC, because they put up €75 for the winner of the championship, 50 for second, and 25 for third. That's going to be very nice. Tiny Graphics as well, who's put together the stream package for this wonderful broadcast. Top 3 in the championship will get some personalised graphics of their choice. And finally, there's a Moser R3 bundle up for grabs as well. A bevy of goods, everybody.
Absolutely. One not to be shaken at, I think, is the way to look at it. A fantastic valuation of prizes. Not only for the winner, but for the top 3 as well. And as we do see, Conrad Bohm here just making their way through, wiggling that car, making sure that everybody is aware of its presence. We will see how they deal as the first driver out on a set of the soft compound of tyres.
Bohm is repping Cadillac, and you can see there with the stars and stripes on that car, or an imitation of the stars and stripes on that car, similarly to the Independence Day livery they had for the British Grand Prix about a week ago. But it's going to be Bohm around the final corner. Will be the first to let fly on a set of the red stripe soft compact tyres and try and set a decent benchmark. You only realistically in Q1 want to use one set of these red stripe rubber.
Absolutely. If you need to, an emergency can be used to use the same set, or if you're really not sure you're going to make it out of the first qualifying session, you will use that second set, but 9 times out of 10 you will just see the one set used. Sometimes, even if drivers are being a little bit brazen, and they might opt for the mediums in one of these runs if they've got them available in their back pocket. A little bit wide at the exit of turn 4 there for Bohm, but does manage to settle the car using what will be the second of the straight line modes available at the 5 of this circuit.
26.4 as we head through the still recently reprofiled turn 6 and turn 7. Remember, that was much slower. We also had a chicane coming out of turn number 8 as well. All those years go back in 2019, I think technically it would have been, because we missed the Australian Grand Prix for a while. 43.7 through the first couple of sectors, really chopping over the curb, but nice run through the 9-10 chicane. And we're going to be wondering how much battery you've got left. It is going to be a tactical game, as we see in real life, trying to regenerate that battery usage to deploy, as we're very close, playing with fire on the track limits through turn number 11. Keeps it nice between the white lines on turn 12. And this should be barring any maladies through the final couple of corners. The benchmark on the slick tyres, Bohm round 14. No wiggles off the back of the car as we see the light flashing. What is the benchmark on the softs? 1:16.3 first competitive time of the session.
Certainly so. Fabrizio Donoso, the next driver to start setting down lap times. It's only a personal best in the first and the second, wildly off pace. So I would assume here a double out lap for Donoso as they get themselves prepared. They were, just for reference, about 5 seconds off the pace of Conrad Bohm in the first sector alone. So maybe just going for that double warm-up lap, which we have seen inside of sim racing a number of times before. The drivers like to use it just to get those tyres in the peak operating window, especially as the track's only about 26 degrees. A lovely 19 degrees in the air around here in Melbourne. So for the spectators, perfect weather, I'd argue.
I would love if it was 19 degrees where it is right now. My goodness. I've got the air conditioning on in the background, but Fabrizio Donoso over the line with a 30 flat. Of course, not a representative time in the Ferrari, as we see somebody ducking over there. This is Lucas Beisner on his set of the soft compound tyres, up by a couple of seconds, as you would expect, through Sector 1 and Sector 2, looking to get as close or eclipse the benchmark turn we've got with Conrad Bohm at the moment. Yellow flags with drivers getting out of the way. Don't want to trip over each other. Don't want to take any cheeky slipstream either, otherwise you will be getting yourself a post-race penalty. To the line we go with Beisner, and we do lower the benchmark by 0.02 of a second.
Certainly do. Next across the line, improving in purple sector land, is going to be Jack West. They've made waves through the second sector and in towards turns 12 and 13. Just prior to the overtaking detection point that we do see here at the Melbourne circuit. You'll see that dotted line, they cross over right about there. That will be your overtake point, and the solid line is the overtake activation you can use for the following lap. But for the time being, Jack West up towards the line goes third fastest, a 16.436.
Interesting to see who's willing to risk the most to try and get out of this first part of qualifying. Bohm back in the pits. This is Larry Tulke round the final couple of corners. Representing Red Bull Racing, up to the line, cutting the beans. Will he go faster? No, 16.5, slowest of the 4 soft tyre runs that we've had so far. Joe Murphy through the penultimate corner. How much battery have you got left? How much can you deploy on this start-finish straight to try and get a leg up on your opponent's car just behind as well? But Murphy to the line, and we go third fastest on a 16.4.
Personal best for Santana, making their way through the second sector, just passing what will be the slow-moving, by all means, the Ferrari on the inside of turn 11. Luca Rapassa out of nowhere goes fastest. It was only a personal best in the first and the second. Purple in the third and final. So finds form by 76 thousandths of a second up at the top row.
Like a Hardy P5, 16.4. Make that 6th as Victor Varda up to P2 on a 16.3. Here comes Santana up to the line. Goes position 4. Another driver, member of that 116.3 club. We've got Fabrizio Donoso down there on a 16.9. A little bit off the pace. Marcel Patz with an interesting run there through turn 12. This has got to be the Aston Martin, you would expect, and is hopefully not as slow as it is in real life. Keeping it tight through turn number 14 as the active aero open, no longer DRS, now straight mode. Up to the line we go with the Aston Martin. We go 7th fastest on another 116.4. Really tightly congested.
Certainly so. It was purple middle sector for Paps as well. Couldn't quite find form, should we say. We've got to keep an eye on both this driver here, Gabor, and of course, I believe as well, Julian Klaffenbach, who is fastest in the second sector, just behind of the driver at the moment. So Gabor making waves in probably the most accurate Mercedes livery that I've seen recreated on this game so far. They will round out of turn 14. Joris Krozen goes fastest, a 1:16.077. Next off the line, Gabor just behind him, missing out by 98 thousandths of a second. What can Klaffenbach do on their first run?
A couple of big moves made by Krozen and Chonstos. What can Klaffenbach do, as you said, up to the line, and it's 8th fastest, 16.3. You're looking at those times now, 16.3, 16.4, thinking you're not necessarily going to be safe. Gabriel Quintino, 1:16.8. There goes Francesco Largo in the Alpine to P5, just behind Varzo. Luca Rapassa, though, retiring in the pits. So that is your social race 1 winner, thinking that they are going to be safe on a 16.2. That probably means that Krozen and Chonstos are going to be safe as well. The problem for Luca Rapassa is a 1/10 of a second and he's down in P10. And a couple of tenths, and you are down in the bottom 6. So you've just got to be careful. You don't want to take too many liberties, but Rapassa clearly think there's not 15 other drivers that are going to be doing 16.2s and better.
Absolutely. And if you look at it maybe to a more closer league race standard, half a second, that's all the drivers need to find. That will put them down in, well, last place, or just shy of last place, just below Gabriel Quintino. So a very, very close grid up and down the field here as we make our way through Q1. We've got just over 4 minutes left in this qualifying, and at the moment, Alejandro really in some trouble here as they yet to set a lap time.
Bottom 5, Alejandro Luero with no time on the board. Fabrizio Donoso, Gabriel Quintino, Larry Tulki and Tamas Gal. Got to be inside the 16.4s as it stands. I'm thinking probably if you're in the 16.3s, I think you might just squeeze through. Looking at Conrad Bohm there on a 16.382, you might just be sweating bullets a little bit if you're unable to find an improvement out there. Alejandro Luero, formerly on the PlayStation side, was very quick on the PlayStation side as well. Out there again, repping Red Bull Racing, needs to try and find that time on the board. This is the problem when you don't get a banker lap in the first half of the session. You sort of treading on eggshells a little bit going into the final runs. You've got that weight on your shoulder because you don't have the fallback option, the safety net of if you don't find improvement, maybe you can just sneak through with that first run.
There's also that mentality aspect as well, where you don't have the delta to try and chase and encourage your way through the lap, especially as you maybe make minor mistakes that you don't necessarily know about as much compared to when you are running semi-blind, I want to say, around this Melbourne street circuit, but they will be the only driver that has got that issue. All of the other 20 cars, retired or not, have set a personal best lap here so far. And we mentioned the top 4 have retired, as is Steven Vasso joining Rapasa, Konstos and Crozen as well in that top 4 that have retired early on. So the benchmark, a 1:16.307, feeling like they're safe to go through.
I would say the top 4, you would probably hang your hat on them being safe. Steven Vaso's got about a third of a tenth in hand over Largo just behind. Bison are out on the circuit, as are a number of drivers in the second half of the field. But this is going to be a pressurised scenario here for Alejandro Luero. No time on the boards. Need to be at least in the 16.4s to give yourself a hope in hell of getting into Q2. Realistically, like we've mentioned a couple of times, 16.3 at worst. This a little bit unstable through the second part of turns 1 and 2.
Flying past the McLaren that's slow at the exit of turn 2 and making their way towards turns 3 and turns 4. An easy place to lose the rear end of the car, especially if you're not overly confident, using all of the track available to them here this afternoon. And they do that rather spectacularly. straight line mode opened on the way down towards turns 6 and 7. Then a fast and flowing sector, which is a bit of a double entendre in many aspects of this racetrack, because you want to throw the car in as quick as you can, but turn 7, the left-hander, sometimes sneaks up on you quicker than you remember it being there.
Yeah, got to be really careful with those track limits. Very easy just to carry a little bit too much speed through turn 6, push yourself slightly off kilter through 7 and throw your lap time in the bin. Car getting out of the way here for Luero. Good run through turns 9 and 10. Bit of traffic to contend with, but he should be fine with a little bit of margin to the couple of cars in front. Not sure how long's left in the session. Will he have another opportunity perhaps to go again? I doubt it. You'd expect fuel for just one flying lap. Needs this desperately. 21st of 21 runners. Yet to get a time on the board. Got to be in the low 16s to give yourself any semblance of hope to get into Q2. What can Luero do up to the line? 21st becomes 6th. Good lap time there. 16.3 gives himself an opportunity. There's a hell of a lot of drivers within a very, very small space of time.
Absolutely, we'll keep an eye on the bottom end of this table as well as we make our way through. We've got the likes of Tamas Gal, Larry Tukey, drivers that you don't expect to be at the bottom of this table, that are trying to find a way through as things stand, and they are making waves. Purple first sector for Tamas Gal here, down in 18th place, and keeping an eye on how it all goes.
Tamas Gal, 18th at the moment. Kokeni in the bottom 5, along with Gal, Tulki, Quintino, and Fabrizio Donoso. Couple of tenths found by Tamas Gal. That would take him into the 16.3s. Needs to maybe extract a little bit more. And this is where you are potentially just a little bit brazen by retiring this early on when it is so close. Steven Vaso not that far away from the bottom 5 as Kokeni up to P8 on a 16.355. Pushes Bison and pushes Bohm down to the lower reaches of the top 10. Tamas Gal representing the Cadillac team. Round the final corner we come. Little bit of traffic in front. Santana still on an outlap. Will they manage to get round in time? We'll have to wait and see. Up to the line, Tamas Gal goes third fastest. 1:16.1. I think Quintino going again. This is Fabrizio Donoso down at the back of the pack in 21st, 16.9. Larry Tulki is done, so that's the first of our confirmed eliminations. 16.5 for Tulki. Tycho Hardy, fourth fastest, 16.1. Can Donoso get through? No, 20th only.
Wow. Not what we'd expect from Fabrizio Donoso, of course, F1 esports driver, and was in place for Aston Martin for a while, and down at 20th place, not finding his way out of Q1 here at the moment. Sergio Sobrino still at risk, as is Joe Murphy, but it is Joe Murphy that's gone purple in the first sector, finding form right when it really matters. We're right on board with Gabriel Quintino, who has done a personal best in the first and no improvement in the second, though. Let's see what they can do as they run up towards the line. They'll get the final bout of the straight line mode. Up towards the timekeeper's clock. Can they find time? Yes, but not enough to find themselves outside of the elimination zone.
Sabrino on the bubble, Murphy on the bubble, Jack West very much on the bubble as well. 16th and done on a 1:16.369. Klaffenborg and Santana and Bohm as well, very much looking over their shoulders at these drivers still to come through. Bottom three already sorted. 2 spaces left to get knocked down in Q1. Sabrino goes 7th fastest, 16.2. Joe Murphy now needs an improvement. West is out, and this pushes Klaffenborg down with Murphy up to P6, and Klaffenborg returning to pit road with an invalidation. Confirms our bottom 5. Conrad Bohm invalidates as well and scrapes through by the skin of his teeth. 4 milliseconds the difference between Bohm and Klaffenborg, but it's the latter that goes out.
Wow, what a qualifying. What an opening Q1 we've seen here in VPS, and if that sets the tone for the rest of the season, there is going to be fireworks when we get to the end of that 14-week calendar, because just Q1 alone has been exciting. We've still got 2 more qualifying sessions to come here today in Australia, and of course the race, and over the total rest of the season there's a lot of racing to come. I think, if memory serves, 42 rounds of qualifying, I believe.
Absolutely huge, everybody. But I saw there that 15th, 16th, 17th and 18th were separated by, I think, 8 milliseconds. That is how tight it is, and that's the problem. If you do make a tiny mistake, you are left very much exposed, because even just 2 or 3 hundredths of a second, that can be worth 3, maybe even 4 places. As we're just going to be met with a black screen, so we won't be able to tell you the drivers, or we won't be able to tell you the times. That's all the drivers go out, but we can confirm Julian Klaffenborg is out, along with Jack West, Larry Tulke, Gabriel Quintino, and Fabrizio Donoso, rounding out the 5 to make way in Q1.
We love a black screen on F1 25. Not
Classic.
necessarily what we like to say. It is classic. We get to a timing page and everything just goes a little bit kaput. So unfortunately, no results available to show on the screen. But we saw who was out. Anybody, you can do your own mental maths. You take the 16 remaining drivers and you figure out the 5 that are missing as we head into what will be Q2. And we're almost getting straight into it. Of course, no breaks between qualifying sessions for our drivers. They get a little bit, maybe 30 seconds of R&R until being thrust back into the domains of Melbourne Park.
Slightly shorter session, of course, as well. 15 minutes compared to 18, and 16 drivers will be taking to the track for the second part of qualifying. There we are. If you missed it, eliminated Fabrizio Donoso in 21st, Gabriel Quintino, Larry Tulke, Jack West, and Julian Klaffenborg missing out by 4 milliseconds. The gap between P6 and P18 was just over 1/10 of a second. That is unbelievable.
Looking very close then, and we always knew it was going to be close. It's one of those series and one of those events that always does just provide some absolutely fantastic entertainment. I think as we get to races where you can recharge that a little bit more, you can burn the battery slightly more aggressively than you can here at Australia, those gaps are only going to tighten up maybe a little bit more as drivers just start to understand how the battery works and how they can best burn in certain situations. So we're kind of figuring out as we go along. People are saying in chat we weren't nervous at all with a 6 millisecond gap. I'm doubting you on that one, because 6 milliseconds is not a lot of time.
Yes, that's, I was going to say blink and you'll miss it stuff, but blinking, that's so much slower than 6 milliseconds. But that is the marker for everybody. That's how close it's going to be, you would imagine, as most drivers have piled out straight at the beginning of the session. Tycho Hardy and Lucas Beisner remaining in pit road, fighting for a bit of track position. This is Joe Murphy having a scrap. Not sure who the driver he's battling with. I believe that's potentially the Cadillac, or it might be a Williams with that little bit of blue on the livery. But now they're going to try and make some space. Remember, no slipstreaming is allowed, so you have to try and leave a bit of free real estate to the drives that you find in front. That might be the reason why Tycho Hardy and Lucas Beisner opting to go slightly out of sync with the rest. But Joe Murphy round the final corner managed to get through with a good late run. It's Joris Krozen at the head of the field, though, leading us down to T1.
Absolutely. You mentioned as well the blinking, just how close that is. It's actually about 50 times quicker than a human can blink. So really interesting to see how close those times were. But Krozen in towards the first sector. No intermediate runs here in Q2. And that was to be expected. You don't traditionally see drivers opting for that wet compounded tyre to make their way through. No outlaps necessarily needed. They've got their grip with the circuit and how it handles in the current weather conditions that still remain. About 25 degrees of track temperature. We've got 19 degrees still in the air. And as it stands, purple sectors left, right and centre currently being held by Joe Murphy on a 26.417.
We didn't get into the 15s in the first part of qualifying. We finished on a 16 flat right at the sharp, and that time was picked up by Joris Krozen, who we are, of course, looking at right now. Tycho Hardy still in the pits along with Lucas Beisner, but as Krozen barrels down into turn number 11, slamming shut the not the overtake mode, the active aero, the straight line mode into the heavy braking zone, and now through turn number 12, threading the needle with those track limits. We've seen so many drivers getting ever so close to the white lines there, or the yellow lines technically in some parts of the circuit, to indicate you've gone out to the limits, but that's a big slide. Midway through the final corner, rear tyres being lit up, Krozen to the line. It's a 16.7, 7/10 down on his personal best from Q1. Joe Murphy with a 16.3, fastest at the moment. 16.6 for Sergio Sabrina, expecting a lot of these times to be on used soft compound tyres. Largo to the line goes fastest on a 16.303.
Purple in the middle sector as well for John Stoss in 14th place as it stands, not yet to set a lap time for the Mercedes outfit. They'll come through the final corner of turns 14. Open up the straight line mode and down towards the line and see what they can try and summon up from the German engineers, and it is going to be only 6th fastest, so purple sector 2 and purple sector 3 for John Stoss, but couldn't quite find the time to take it right to the top, and that shows here, and it's something we're really finding with the 2026 regulations, is it is so much about consistency over a lap as opposed to finding purple sectors.
And some drivers, admittedly, they will start to converge as Bohm over the line with an invalidated run. You would expect heading into his second attempt on this set of tyres, probably third flying lap, or maybe even fourth on that set of soft compound tyres. But we might still be seeing some divergence in ERS strategies and where you're going to deploy and where you choose to recharge. And obviously, you can't be 100% consistent, can you, with your recharging? As Bohm, very wild there through turn number 4, goes off the road, but doesn't get the lap time invalidated, but would have leaked a hell of a lot of time as we come up towards turns 6 and 7. 27.6 is not particularly quick through the first sector, and I don't think this will be troubling the top 10. Currently occupied with Victor Valder on a 16.6, but when the new tyres are bolted on, you'd expect those times to tumble and maybe get closer to the 15s.
Absolutely. I think if we get into Q3, sorry, when we get into Q3, not if we get into Q3, we will start to see those times probably creeping ever closer to the 15s, if not already firmly planted into the 1 minute 15. So we're still watching a ball with Corin Bowman. They did invalidate, actually, through the second sector, so no more running for them here this afternoon, at least on the current format. And as we make our way through the final few corners, I wonder if they'll peel into the pits and go for fresh tyres, because we are starting to run somewhat short of time. They do make a very late call to come into pit road. So all now drivers were in the pits, bar one. It's Lucas Beisner, who's out down in 15th place, yet to set a lap time for themselves as well. For the first run, they'll see how they can handle.
Less than 10 minutes to go. Not sure if these are used or new tyres for the Ferrari of Lucas Beisner. Made it through, of course, but was sweating a little bit at the end of Q1, as were a lot of drivers with how congested it was. Just a tenth of a second from P6 down to P18, I believe, in that session. Two of those drivers feeling maybe a little bit hard done by to come out on the wrong side of how congested that session was. Now we're seeing more drivers emerging from the pit lane. Joe Murphy back out there along with Tamas Kokeni and Francesco Largo, but Beisner didn't go out right at the start of the session. We'll see what kind of benchmark he can set.
It'll be interesting seeing if the offset strategy seems to have paid dividends for Beisner here this afternoon through turns 14 and gets the straight line mode open towards the first corner. I can't type in chat, but I'm going to type my opinion anyway. British engineers rule against all, but for Lucas Beisner in towards the opening corner, already invalidate, so that will be at the end of that, Tom.
Bad start. Really bad start.
Yeah.
Worst possible start, I think, is the way to put that one, unless maybe you put a wheel into the grass going into turns 1 and 2 and you loop it round past the Maldonado start from 2013. But Beisner making a mess of their first attempt of the session. Tycho Hardy emerges from the pit lane for the first time as well in Q2. This is the provisional fastest man, Francesco Largo, on a 16.303. Remember, the fastest time in Q1 was a 16 flat. Probably expecting, what do you think the cutoff's going to be? Hard to read at this stage. Maybe 16.2s you might squeak through. You'd expect drivers to find a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think we're going to find improvements from absolutely everybody. I think we are, like you said, it'll be 16.1s or 16.2s, I think will be the cutoff. I think anyone who is on a 4 or a 5 has to find time. 3s might get through by the skin of their teeth, but we'll see how it makes their way through. For Francesco Largo, they do make their way towards the opening corner to start off what will be their second run of the afternoon.
Really harrying the car through the apex of turn one. You can see the wheel tracks through the grass as drivers turning in very early, trying to carry as much speed as they possibly can. Again, harrying the car into the heavy braking zone of turn three, threading it nicely through four, keeping it within the white lines. Very bumpy there, right on the exit of turn four, right up to the barrier as well through turn six and through the first sector. We're up by 13 milliseconds. Back of the car maybe stepping out a little bit as he chucked it into turn 6 and 7, and now maybe a little bit of time just to relax as you pile towards turns 9 and 10.
Looking impressive at the moment for the hot pink car. Of course, making their way towards turns 9 and turns 10. The fastest chicane on this circuit. Takes it with pride and takes it with aggression beautifully through. And opens up the straight line mode towards turn 11. Probably one of the heavier braking zones on this circuit with the exception of turn 3. Gets the car rotated nicely, not touching the gravel, which is important. And now just 3 more corners remain on this Melbourne street circuit to see what they can try and muster up. They've got 2 remaining now. Just a left and a right, and the overtake detection point they'll pass through as well. Joe Murphy goes fastest at 1:16.209. Can Francesco Largo respond? Up towards the line, can they? Yes! It's a 1:16.162, the fastest so far in the second qualifying session.
Laps P3, 16.6 as well. We wait for these times to start coming through. Drives on brand new tyres. Tamas Gal with a quarter of a second. Found through the first sector. 4th fastest at the moment on a 16.3. Yellow flags out there for drivers getting out of the way in the final sector. Still a couple of tenths up, just under 3 tenths. And a really nice run, actually, in the second part of the 9-10 chicane. Still Francesco Largo with the benchmark. Sergio Sobrino, P3, 16.2. Victor Varda, I think, up to P6. Make that 7 as Lucas Beisner invalidated his first attempt. Gets a time on the board with a 16.253. But Tamas Gal, serious wheels at the moment in that car as we round the final couple of corners. Can we beat the benchmark set by Francesco Largo? Santana to P4, 16.2. Improvements coming across the board. Gal to the line, 16 flat. Lowers it by a further 10th.
Purple in the first section, then just found personal best in the second and the third for Tamas Gal, and that's where they really started to find their time. Keep an eye on Joris Krozen as well. Purple in the middle sector, personal best in the first, so they've got to have a consistent third and final. They'll get the straight line mode open nicely through the exit of turns 14. Up to the line, they go fastest now, 1:15.930. The benchmark has been broken. We're into the 1-minute 15s, folks.
Fastest in Q1, fastest as things stand in Q2 as Galachonstos to P3, 1:16.116, just behind Tamas Gal, slotting ahead of Francesco Largo. Tycho Hardy didn't get a competitive time on the board, 1:20.7. Definitely going to have to go again as things stand the bottom 6. Victor Varda, Alejandro Luero, Luca Rapassa, winner of Social Race 1. Thomas Kokeni in the pit, Stephen Varzo and Tycho Hardy. I'd be interested to see if Luca Rapassa is on a flying lap. I don't think so. I'm trying to look for the orange around there. Up by a tenth and a bit, Luca Rapassa, as we round the final corner in the McLaren liveried car. Do we find an improvement? Do we get into the top 10? Yes, P4. Good final sector, 1:16.1.
Interesting lap there from Rapassa. Personal best in the first and the third, not improving in the second, so that seems to be their weakness, where a majority of the battery seems to be burned. But again, I reckon it's that 6-7 chicane where drivers are just getting a little bit caught out with how the car wants to try and handle through there. Of course, quite notably here at Australia, you want to run a bit of a straight line setup. You want to improve as much of that straight line as you can find. Tamas Gal retiring from the session then on a 1:16.071, deciding that will be fast enough to make their way through to the shootout, which will involve the top 10 here in VPS.
Frozen, I'd be pretty sure he'll be through as well on that 15.9. And yes, right on cue, we have the retirement from Joris Krozen done for the session. In the bottom 6, Conrad Bohm was bumped down by Luca Rapassa's improvement. Haven't seen the competitive run yet from Tamas Kokeni. Stephen Varza with a late lap as well to go 6th fastest on a 1:16.1. So it's Tycho Hardy yet to get a competitive run. Kokeni, Luero, Varda, Paps and Bohm, your bottom 6 as we head towards the final runs.
Absolutely. 3.5 minutes left in this qualifying session, and it will be Tamas Kokeni that will be the first to set their run, almost certainly, if they do not choose to go for that double outlap. We've seen the likes of Lucas Bessina, Sergio Sobrino, to name amongst a few that are starting to make their way out of pit road, joined by Paps and Alejandro as well, down in 14th place, looking to find their own improvements to make their way through towards the top 10. That is, of course, what will lead us through to those 10 drivers in qualifying 3. We mentioned about that cut-off time, Tom. I think it is going to be a 16.2 flat will be that cut-off for the top 10 shootout.
You've read my mind, because I was about to ask you the same question. Yeah, I think low 16-2, 16-1. I think if you're in the high 16-1s, you're playing with fire a little bit. Steven Varzo, I don't think will be comfortable. Same with Francesco Lager, who is out there on an outlap. Yet to see Chonstos or Rapassa emerge from the pit lane with just over 2.5 minutes to go. But Kokeni taking a very wide line to sweep it through the final corner. Set yourself up for the blast down to turn 1 and try and find a big improvement. Half a second at least, you would say, Kokeni needs to try and find here.
Absolutely. As a bare minimum, half a second or so. Ideally, maybe 7/10 to get themselves into the 115s if they're feeling a little bit spicy here this afternoon. But through the first 2 corners, looking good. We'll wait to see what that first sector split is telling us. We don't get the micro sectors like they do in real life, which would be lovely to see. I must admit, if anyone can develop that, because I think the game might actually show off that data, at least through UDP data. So it'll be interesting to see. It looks like they might back off as they exited through 7. We'll see the split, 1.9 seconds down, so double outlap will be forced to the way of Tamas Kokeni.
Looked a little bit wobbly going through turn 4. Maybe it was slightly wide. Car unsettled by the bump. So it's Beisner that we jump on board with in the Ferrari car. Was 15th in qualifying 1. Made it through by 6 milliseconds. Now hovering on the edge once again. 10th fastest on a 16.253. Rotating it through turn 3. Using all of the road on the run into turn number 4. But manages to keep it off the curb and off the bumpy parts of the circuit on the outside. Doesn't trouble the curb going through turn 5. And we find an improvement by 700ths of a second. Like we mentioned in Q1, tiny incremental improvements. They're going to be worth gold dust for these drivers because of how congested it is.
It really doesn't feel like much when you're gaining maybe half a tenth or so over the course of the circuit. But if you look up and down the field, that would jump, say, Santana up to 7th place, just ahead of Joe Murphy. So we'll keep on board with Lucas Beisner as they made their way out of turns 10. And what will be the second to last straight line mode activation point in towards turn 11, just one of the cars behind, getting out the way as the Ferrari tries to peel their way through and up towards the top through turns 12 here and in towards the final 2 for Bessner. See what they can try and summon up, if they can make their way into the top 10 comfortably, because that'll be the crucial deficit.
Beisner on the bubble as we round the final corner. Final attempt in Q2. 16.2 becomes a 16 flat up to 3rd fastest. That is a statement put down by the Ferrari. Loera improving only by 2 milliseconds. Needs this lap time. Gets into P10 as Marcel Paps is back in the pit. So that's our first confirmed elimination. Marcel Paps is done. 13th at best on a 16.3. Loera, the driver, at risk on a 16.2. As Sabrino goes 3rd fastest on a 16 flat. Largo with an improvement 2 ahead of Beisner. 16.1 might be the time you need to find now, with Steven Varzo upwards on that 16.1 time.
Absolutely, looking close to the moment. Tamas Kokeni as well, improving through the first and the second sectors. Personal best in both of those respective sectors, and we'll see what they can sum it up through the final 3 corners of this circuit. Can they try and make their way safely in towards that top 10? The checkered flag flies here in the second qualifying session for the opening round of the Ventauri Pro Series as Bohm retires from the 12th place, so will not improve. Psycho Hardy up to 9th place. What can Kokeni do? Up towards the line, go 6th fastest, safety surely.
Heiko Hardy at risk. Varzo's done though, doesn't improve, stays 11th fastest. So Varzo's out, Luero's out, Bohm, Varda and Paps. It's only Alex Santana trying to squeeze through at the last gasp. Joe Murphy in 9th place is safe. It's Tycho Hardy versus Alex Santana, unless Alejandro Luero has managed to pull a second lap time out of the abyss. But it is going to be Santana around the final corner. Up to 2nd goes Chonstos into the 15-second drive to do so. Can Santana get through? No. 12th fastest only on a 16.2. And that is that for our second part of qualifying. Joe Murphy invalidates but is safe in 9th. The drivers making way. Marcel Paps with a mistake. Victor Wilder, Conrad Bohm, Alejandro Luero, Alex Santana and Steven Varzo. Bit of a shock, that one. 11th fastest only. Didn't find an improvement on their final run.
Really not the way you'd expect that to sort of play out in that qualifying session. We said about about a 16.2, give or take, maybe half a tenth or so. So actually that was probably quite accurate from us up in the commentary box. It's like we've been doing this for a while, Tom. We start to learn and understand what the knockout times might be. We occasionally get it wrong. Actually, no, most times we get it wrong. But every now and then we do get it right, and I'm going to claim we got it right here today.
We're pretty close. I said 16.2, low 16.2, so I would have been gone if that was my lap time, no matter what it was in a 16.2. We were very close. But yes, another 6 drivers making way, and that will leave us with a top 10 shootout. There is Victor Wilder, 15th fastest. Only a couple of drivers were still in the 16.3s. That was definitely not going to be enough. But we see the times there. Joris Krozen, fastest in Q1, fastest in Q2. It is Paps, Wilder, Bohm, Luero, Santana, and Varzo that failed to make the final part of qualifying.
Wow. So top 10 then. We head towards that final Q3 shootout where we will determine who starts from what position and who starts from pole position for the very first time in the Ventauri Pro Series. What an honour that would be to claim the first ever pole position as we made our way through into the series. And before we go into Q3, shall we have a quick reminder of the calendar? We've got a couple of seconds, I reckon.
Yes, let's do it. Let's have a little gander at where we're heading. Around the planet Earth, starting, as you know, down under in Australia, upside down. And then we head to China in a week's time. That's going to be an interesting one. Tyre West strategy, that'll be fascinating. The effective charging station, as Fernando Alonso called it, of Silverstone. And then the Red Bull Ring at Austria, which is going to be carnage as well.
Absolutely. We then head to Japan, Belgium, Bahrain and Texas, the Circuit of the Americas, rounding out what will be the first 8 races. And the final 4, as we mentioned slightly earlier on, we head to Jeddah, which will be chaos, nonetheless, and cannot be understated, before Mexico burns every single driver's hopes, dreams, and maybe a little bit of battery as well towards the first corner, before heading to what every calendar should end at, being Interlagos, and then, of course, the real ending to most calendars being Abu Dhabi do.
Yes, we do, Abu Dhabi do. To round out season number 1, 13th of October. That feels like a hell of a long time in the future, but it will come round very quickly, I assure you. So, top 10 shootout. Hardy, Murphy, Beisner, Rapassa, Kroos and Sabrino, Gal, Largo, Chonstos and Kokeni heading out for the pole position shootout. Use 2, maybe 3 sets of tyres, depending on how much on the bubble these drivers felt they were. So tyre strategies will be an interesting one. Who's got a couple of sets of softs maybe to deploy in this final part of qualifying?
That'll be the question. And just under 12 minutes on our timekeeper's clock. And of course, losing a little bit of time with every qualifying session that does progress here in Melbourne. And we want to hear from you. Of course, we always do. We want to hear your thoughts, feelings, and maybe some concerns. Although, normally, they'll head out to Harvey rather than us. But let us know who you think out of this top 10 might be getting the very first pole position here in the Venturi Pro Series.
Give us some predictions, everybody. What do we think? Who are we backing? What horses do we think are going to be galloping towards that first pole position? Feels like we're back in the right place for a season opener, doesn't it? Australia, none of this Bahrain nonsense opening the season up as it has done prior to 2026 for the past few couple of years, and 25 to be fair as well. Australia, Albert Park, that's where it's at. Waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to watch probably your favourite driver have a stinker.
Absolutely, because new regulations as well come in for most of the seasons, or they bring some upgrades that inevitably don't work. Or if you're an Alpine fan, this circuit certainly gives you PTSD from a few years ago. But Tom, before we get the opinions coming in from all the drivers and the representatives, the fans in the chat, who's your prediction for pole? Because I think I know who mine is.
I think we're probably thinking of the same person. Joris Kroesen's been very impressive. Are we not? Wow.
I don't think we are.
I'm looking at Joris Kroesen, who's been cooking so fast, cooking something delectable. I would even go as far as to say also. Fastest Q1, fastest Q2. It's very boring, but the gap that he's managed to pull over everybody else only needed 1 run effectively in both sessions. If you exclude the used tyre run in qualifying 2, I think he looks really hooked up.
I think I agree with you on all of those points, don't get me wrong. I'm going to go for a little bit of a dark horse element for this pole position run. I'm going to say Francesco Largo. I think it's going to be my prediction for pole here this afternoon. They've looked very solid in the first 2 qualifying sessions. I think they've got a little bit extra to give as we head into Q3. So just watch this space.
I like it. I like it. And it's an opinion that I can get behind as well. Be interesting to see what Luca Rapassa manages as well. Remember, winner of the first social race back in Barcelona around about a month ago. Wasn't fastest, in fact, only qualified 7th, I believe, in that one, but worked their way through to the front of the pack in the end, beating out Jensen Rosen in what was a nice little battle come the end of the race. And that was an exciting one to kickstart the 2 social races, followed by Zandvoort, which was won by Tudor Presscan, who is not here this evening or afternoon or morning or midnight, wherever Tudor Presscan happens to be on the globe right now. But everybody heading out, barring Joris Kroesen and Gabor Chonstos, who are still seeking refuge in the pit lane as it stands.
Interesting approach from both Gabor and Joris. Maybe just waiting for the opening few lap shenanigans to start to take place, as we do have, I believe that was Joe Murphy just swooping on past, deciding they are going to be the driver that sets the opening run here in Melbourne Park for the 3rd and final qualifying session. The opening round of VPS, the Audi, almost certainly inspired livery, making their way through. And Tom, I can't say this enough, I can't wait to have proper liveries back in the race.
It will be very exciting, won't it? I'll be very happy as well when the game works and we don't have to use these multiplayer cars. But alas, we will continue as we were. As coming out of the pits, I believe that was Joris Kroesen emerging from the pit lane, back end stepping out ever so slightly there for Joe Murphy over the curb as he carried a hell of a lot of speed through the first couple of corners. Heavy braking down into turn number 3, hoping the front end bites, trying to keep it on the straight and narrow. Doesn't use all of the road on the run into turn 4, uses the curb on the exit of 4, then through 5, just a little bit onto the curb with those outside tyres. And through the first sector at a 26.4 as you hurl the car through turn 6 and 7 and then bury the throttle into the floor up through 8 and towards the 9-10 chicane.
Looking that way, opening the straight line mode, the longest on this circuit on the run down towards turn 9 and turns 10 before a swift reopening of the rear and front wings. It's a tough one to try and manage because the cars will be a little bit unsettled as you make your way in towards turn 9 and turn 10. And then you've got to try and just control any of rear end movement that you will see. Tamas Gal down in 7th fastest. Goes purple in the opening sector, but will keep an eye still on Joe Murphy. They've taken the purple second sector and held the purple second sector for the time being. We've had 4 other drivers attempt it so far, including an invalidation from Tamas Kokine down in 10th fastest, or 10th place should I say, but Joe Murphy up towards the line. They will cross a 1:16.225. They'll need at least 2 tenths, if not more, to try and guarantee pole here. Lucas Beisner goes fast as 1:16.1.
Bison already faster. Largo slots in between them, 4 milliseconds slower than the Ferrari car. Here is Tamas Gal in what I think is the Mercedes, or it might be the Cadillac. To the top we go with Gal. 1:16.1, still the fastest time from Q2 with Joris Krozen on a 15.9. Gabor Chonstos also got into the 15.9s as well. Bit of a back-end step up for Sabrino through the final corner over the curb. Do we lower the benchmark? No, we're slowest of the 5 times we've had so far, 16.286. As this is Luca Rapassa with an invalidation and a bailout lap. And that McLaren's going to have to back off and go again as Joris Krozen starts with a 16.4 through the first sector. Not the fastest we've seen so far.
If it's 16.4, they certainly are the quickest for the most part.
Wow, that would be the quickest. 26.4, sorry.
I was about to say 26.4, that's probably more on par for most of the runs that we have seen. A couple of tenths off the fastest, but again, we said it's about consistency. They have gone purple in the second sector though. That one could be critical. They're showing how good they are in a straight line, but can they make up for it, for how well they get the car rotated, most notably through this third and final sector?
Handing time away in the first sector just to bring it back in the middle sector. Fastest in Q1, fastest in Q2. Krozen on the charge as he throws the car into the penultimate corner. Really good rotation as he manages to pull it through. 14 now, flat as you like as you plant the loud pedal. And will this be the benchmark time for Joris Krozen? Up to the beam, 15.9. Not quite as fast as his Q2 time, but still very much in the ballpark with a bit of a buffer to that group behind.
Beautiful stuff. The first of our drivers into the 15s then in the third and final qualifying session, and of course did it at a slightly offset time. Track has cooled by a couple of degrees from what we saw in the opening 2 qualifying, same as the air temperature. It's starting to be a lovely afternoon here in Melbourne, Australia, and you can see the sun just starting to set, I believe, in the offset, or at least becoming very late afternoon, which does look very stunning, albeit not if you're a driver. That sun is going to be well and truly in your eyes as you make your way out of turn 11 into turn 12. But thankfully this is a video game, so no one has to worry about that.
Times coming in from Chonstos and Rapassa, both 16 flats to go second and third fastest respectively. But it's still Joris Krozen at the head of the field after the first runs. 4.5 minutes to go. And it's the Haas with a 1:15.970. Wasn't faster than the time that he managed to put on the board in Q2, which was, it was only marginally slower, it has to be said. 1:15.73, or 9 numbers are difficult. I might be dyslexic as it turns out. 1:15.930, the time for Joris Krozen in Q1. So definitely a little bit of time on the board. Same for Chonstos, who was also in the 15.9s.
Absolutely. Dyscalculia really hitting Tom Wilkinson hard this afternoon. Maybe it's the heat, maybe it's dehydration.
You'd be amazed that I have a maths A level.
I wouldn't, because I know you
A
too
level
well.
As well.
I
numbers.
I cancelled out my maths A level. I decided not to do it in the end, but that's a story for another time. We have got the only driver out as Luca Rapassa at the moment. They are expecting to head into the pits. And before we get into the final few runs, obviously, what are we expecting at the end of this qualifying? Because we will be taking a very short break, just once we have that lobby reset and all the drivers getting back into position. So do just bear with us as we have that post-qualifying break. It's just an opportunity to get the lobby reset, get the drivers into the correct grid positions, and probably for Tom and I to grab a drink very quickly.
Yes, I've been through 2 cups of water, almost 2 cups, a cup and a half of water, but we're still standing strong as Lucas Beisner, the first to emerge for the final runs in Q3. Tycho Hardy and Tamas Kokeni yet to get a time on the board. Hearing as well. Thank you. Undercover spies and agents and Ted Kravitz in the chat. Top 3 on fresh softs, the rest on used soft compound tyres, which actually says those 16 ones on a set of used tyres from Gal and Bison, and realistically 16 twos as well. That is competitive, so maybe we are just going to see for the first time at the sharp end everybody converge on each other. Maybe in the 16 flats, maybe we see a few more drivers getting into the high 15 as well.
That is looking how it's going to go, and of course just over 2.5 minutes left on the clock. We have got 4 drivers yet to exit out of pit road. Crozen, Chonstos, Rapasa and Hardy, those 4 that are yet to make their way out on towards their outlaps. Of course you can leave it somewhat late here in Melbourne. Of course how short the circuit is gives you the opportunity to go late and wait for the track to fully develop. We do have 2 further cars making their way out. It's Tycho Hardy and I believe Joris Crozen as well, hitting out of pit lane slowly, shortly followed by the car of, let's try and guess the colour, Chonstos and then Rapasa.
I'm hoping you're going to be right on that one, but we'll wait and see. Rapasa, definitely, because that's donning the papaya of McLaren, or a bit more of a burnt orange, I think is the best way to put it. I think that's the McLaren official colour as well. But here is Beisner to the line in not quite the scarlet, the crimson Ferrari, barreling into turns 1 and 2. Throw the car and hope that you keep it within the white lines. Really playing with fire there on the exit, but carrying as much speed as you dare as you burn a little bit more battery on this run down into turn number 3. Tricky traction zone on the exit. You'll have to throw the car into turn 4, and it can step out. You're bumpy as well on the outside over that curb right there, and the drainage is fine. Turn 5 is flat as you like, keeping it off the curb for the most part. And through the first sector, we are down by half a tenth.
Not the way they'd like to see this first run go, or the final run go, should we say, and they'll have to try and make improvements. A little bit of slipstream being in effect here from Luca Rapasa, who does swiftly move out of the way at the exit of turn 8, but that might be the millimetric difference that Bessner needs to find an improvement in towards turn 9 and turns 10. They are finding an improvement, 41 thousandths to be precise, but this won't be enough as it stands to take pole.
Got to at least be 16-0 for my money to get inside the top 5 at best. 15 to give yourself an opportunity to take pole position. Joris Crozen holding it as things stand. 15.970. Went 0.04 of a second faster, though, in qualifying 2. Bison around the penultimate corner through the final braking zone with no dramas. Little bit wide, perhaps through turn 14. Nothing left that you can do but burn the battery you've still got left in the car. Up to the line, it's third fastest. 16.049. I think he's going to get bumped firstly by Sabrino. First driver to knock Joris Crozen off his perch. Joe Murphy, 5th fastest. Another driver, 16 flat. Largo to the line in the Alpine. Does he take it away? No. Poor final sector. Slowest of the drivers we've got so far.
Not the way they'd like to see their qualifying go as fast in the first sector, was it for Francesco Largo, but couldn't find form in the second and or the third. Personal best for both Tycho Hardy and Gabor Chonstos in the first sector, the opening sector, and no one else seemed to find any purple sectors. But the checkered flag flies here in Melbourne, Australia. No one will be able to set a lap if they haven't done so already. Next across the line, Tamas Gal, who hasn't found an improvement.
Gal done, 8th fastest at best. Couldn't make the most of those brand new tyres. Gabor Chonstos finding time. Tycho Hardy on a decent run too. But Joris Crozen potentially trying to steal this one back. Haven't seen the final run from Luca Rapasa either, who's only just making his way into the middle sector. Tycho Hardy round the final corner. What will the time be? Hasn't got a lap time on the board so far. Can we dip into the 15s? We can do better than that. We can do 15.930 and go fastest. A real buzzer beater. Sabrino second fastest, knocked off provisional pole. We wait for Crozen and we wait for Luca Rapasa to try and come through. Gabor Chonstos, there is Crozen to the line, and he takes it back, and takes it back by some tune. 15.800. Tycho Hardy bumped to P2. Gabor Chonstos with an improvement. 4th fastest on a 15.957, and that is Luca Rapasa with 0 front wing. And that is the end of the road for the McLaren man. But it's Joris Crozen with a clean sweep. Fastest Q1, fastest Q2, and fastest in Q3.
Certainly showed pace here this afternoon and has found great form. A 10th and some change quicker than anybody else on this field. Tycho Hardy, the closest, 1.3 tenths. Just slightly further behind the entire field, encompassed by just 3.7 tenths as well. So incredibly close up and down this field. But Crozen will take that inaugural honour of starting from the front here in Melbourne Park for the very first round of the Ventauri Pro Series as we get ready to go racing in the next few moments. Do not touch that dial, do not go anywhere when we do eventually switch to that post-qualifying break.
Will indeed. Joris Krozen for the Haas team. His teammate was knocked out in Q1. The Joris Krozen does go fastest, and by some delta too. A tenth and a bit quicker than the rest of the pack. Tycho Hardy with a late run to go second fastest. Really good lap time from the Racing Bulls. Man, Sergio Sabrina, Gabor Chonstos and Tamas Kokeni, your top 5. Lucas Beisner for Ferrari, quarter of a second down in P6. Joe Murphy, Luca Ripasa with a mistake on their final run. Tamas Gal and Francesco Largo, the top 10. But the inaugural pole sitter of the VPS Pro Series goes the way of Joris Krozen. I called it, and I have to say, he has just looked a step above everybody else throughout this quali session.
I don't think I could have called pole position worse. Francesco Largo starting from 10th fastest in Q3.
I forgot about that.
So we'll gloss over that very, very quickly. That never happened.
Hush.
No one saw anything. But we are going to go to a post-qualifying break just whilst the lobby gets reset and the drivers get themselves in. We're going to go grab a drink because I guarantee... how warm is it? It's 30 degrees in this office still here in the UK. Someone explain the thermodynamics of British houses because they don't quite understand how it works. But do not touch that dial. We will be right back.
welcome back, everybody. Our own hydration break has been completed. And whilst the eyes of the world might be in the United States on France versus Spain, we'll be turning our attention to the other side of the planet, Australia, Albert Park in Melbourne. And I'm looking forward to this race because I think this will be a real good indication of how acclimatized drivers are to the battery formula, how much they can recharge. We mentioned it right at the top of the show. Not a lot of heavy braking zones. You've got turn 3, you've got turn 11, penultimate corner as well, where you can shut it down. But there's a lot of high-speed corners, a lot of straights, a lot of slipstreaming, a lot of jostling for position going on. So if you're able to manage that battery, you're going to be absolutely set.
A lot of opportunities as well to mess up your cornering. I think that's the most important one to really kind of dig in, because there's a lot of places on this circuit where things can go a little bit awry as you make your way through, especially if you try and go 2, maybe 3 wide as well. Turn 9 and 10 is probably the most notable of those on the circuit, but anywhere through Sector 3 really doesn't give you the space to both be competitive and open up opportunities to go for 2 wide moves.
Yeah, and overtaking, it's hard to tell, isn't it, with Australia, because not a lot of time you're going to be doing it into heavy braking zones. Obviously, you've got turn 3 and you've got turn 11. Outside of that, it's mainly going to be with the battery and the flip-flopping of positions. What used to be DRS now is going to be the overtake mode with the blue boost button. Remember, inside 1 second you have to have that activated. And pack racing, as we've come to understand, me and you in particular with some of the races we've done in the last couple of weeks, if you get stuck in the pack, you're going to be having, how do I put this in a PG way? You're going to be having a tough time.
Yeah, it's not the finest racing because, again, it's so flip-flop, it's so left-right and forwards and backwards that you make the moves, and we'll see this very much at the likes of China, your Australias, your probably Saudis as well, with such long straights and minimal braking zones. So not much time to recharge the battery. Maybe Spa as well when we head there, because I saw that a couple of days ago, where the long straights allow you to burn that battery, but then with minimal opportunities to recharge between long straights, really leave you vulnerable again.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what corners drivers decide is going to be the recharge corner. I'm looking at turn 6 and 7 as a great opportunity for drivers to back it off. Turn 12 as well, half throttle with the way that should work. Interesting to see how the run on the first lap will be in particular. Do we see everybody filter into position, or do we see a lot of jostling for places? Drivers that have maybe underperformed in qualifying. Looking at someone like potentially Steven Varzo, who failed to make it into Q3. Slightly surprised on that one. Has been really quick in qualifying in the 2 social races. Maybe he'll be feeling a little bit brazen, but we have the 5 red lights. No formation lap, so we're thrown straight into the thick of the action. And for the first time in the VPS Pro Series, we are racing down under in Australia. Crozen versus Hardy on the run to turn 1. The 2 racing bulls into formation. Sabrina to the outside. Hardy's under a little bit of pressure here to try and hold on behind the Mercedes. Half spinning his Gawar Chonstos, I think, giving a helping hand round and tumbling through the field as we converge down to turn number 3 with Kokeni 4th, Header Murphy, Beisner, Luca Rapassa. Good start for Varzo, up a couple of places. Beisner getting stuck in with Joe Murphy, Conrad Bohm and Gabor Chonstos. The Mercedes cars having an absolute stinker, still having it out. Beisner versus Murphy through turn 5.
Chonstos all the way down to 19th from where they started back in 4th place, so really not having the best of race starts here to remember. Of course, no safety car either to really drag them, kicking and screaming back into contention. There's battles up and down this field as we watch here. Julian Klaffenbach in the back of Alejandro Lorello in towards turns 9 and turns 10 as they try and figure themselves out in pack order.
Chonstos, 18th now, battling with Tulki on the run into turns 9 and 10. We're still watching Klaffenbach, second Haas driver. His teammate Joris Gross dominated qualifying, still leading proceedings to the inside. Little look to turn 11, that's Victor Varda. Santana under pressure, that's Jack West in the McLaren away, they're outside. Marcel Paps also getting embroiled and involved in a lot of skirmishes going on. Quintino to the back of the pack along with Tulki, who's lost out to Fabrizio Donoso. Jack West side by side through the final corner as well, trying to put one over on Conrad Bohm. Blink and you'll miss it stuff. Box office on this opening lap with Crozen still leading the way.
Absolute cinema in the opening lap here at Melbourne Park. Of course, over 29 laps of racing we have got to bring you, expecting the traditional one-stop strategy for the most part here in Australia, and everybody still within a second of one another. That is going to be absolutely crucial for all of our drivers, each and every one of them. As yellow flag slightly further back, Gabriel Quintino has dropped off the order. The Williams well and truly into the gravel as they made their way through turns 3. Larry Tukey as well, missing the majority of their front wing there and continuing to hit the barrier as we saw Luca Rapassa get the better of Joe Murphy, up for 6th place, but they're still trying to battle it out as they make their way towards turn 9 and turns 10. The Alpine really hoping the slipstream comes into fruition, looking to the right, but not on this occasion.
Both Alpines hot-footing it after this duo, but great move from Rapasa in what I imagine would have been into turn 6, diving it to the inside, side by side, coming out of 5. Still battling in the lower reaches of the order is Gabor Chonstos. The other Haas on the move. That's Klaffenborg diving to the inside of Luero into turn number 11. The cutback brings the Red Bull back on level terms, but backs out of it through turn number 12, and now under the cosh because ducking and weaving, a little bit of contact as well, a shoulder barge into the final corner with Victor Vardal. Love tap at the rear, and Luero lucky to keep it pointing in the right direction as Vardal was all crossed up into the braking zone, trying to slam the anchors on that Audi.
Reactions of a cat to try and keep that car pointing in the correct direction, and very thankful they do so. Larry Tulke into the pits early on here, of course, after that major bit of front wing damage they encountered through the opening few corners of last lap, but already 2 laps through 29. This race is flying by already. As we do watch on board with Francesco Largo, started down in P10, now up into P8 from a few earlier position made and up ahead of their teammate, which is the most important thing. That's Steven Varso, who started down in 11th, now make that down in 10th place as Tamas Gal goes for the move on the Alpine cars. They made their way through turn 8. The Cadillac back up to 9th place.
Saw what Rapasa did on the previous lap, said I'll raise that, but Varso, I don't think we'll be too enamoured by it. Didn't have too much space on the outside to try and keep his foot in and hold it on the right-hand side. Still Crozen leading the 2 racing bulls. Kenny 4th, Bison 5th, ahead of Rapasa, who's up a place from their starting position. Murphy 7th, ahead of Largo, Gal and Steven Varso, your top 10. Klaffenborg a little bit detached, 6/10 per second, half a second off the back of the Alpine in position number 10. We've still got Victor Valda all over the back of Alejandro Luero. Little look to the inside of the penultimate corner again. There was contact on the previous tour. This time they keep it nice and clean, but very much trying to apply the blowtorch to this Red Bull.
A little bit of a wiggle from Santana coming out of the final corner as well. The Williams not necessarily having the best of traction applications. Coming out of 14, we start on to lap 4 here in Australia, and it's still Victor Vilda down in 13th place, as my memory just starts to fail me. It's not a good sign as we're only 4 laps into this race already, but maybe, again, we're just going to blame the heat. Back up towards the front, though. Joris Crozen still leading. Majority of the drivers starting on the hard compound of tyres. There were just 4 exceptions to that. We've got Alejandro, one of them. The other drivers being Jack West, I believe, Marcel Pouch, Gabriel Quintino as well. And, of course, Larry Tulke, who did start on hard compound of tyres, but has to switch to the mediums after his early pit stop.
Get shot of those early after the damage picked up on lap 2 that took Gabriel Quintino off with the Red Bull into the gravel, as that was Varsa having a little look perhaps to the outside of turn 9. Would have turned to the inside of turn 10, but wasn't quite close enough to slide the Alpine alongside and challenge Gal and put the Cadillac out of position through the high-speed chicane, cranking on the steering lock into turn 11. He tries to rotate the car, get the front of the car to bite, the nose to bite, as you try and force it through the slower speed corners. Real line of stern stuff as we come through the final couple of corners. This is Sabrino P3 ahead of Kekeni, Bison, Rapasa, Murphy, Largo. Nose to tail through turns 13 and 14. Crozen's look pretty untroubled at the sharp end for the opening 5 laps of this race. It's slightly wide there as Largo just in the back of shot. They'll just push him away from Joe Murphy as Tamas Gal losing a bit of time in the final sector too, still under pressure from Varso.
Lucas Bison as well making moves, or at least gaining a little bit of time to Tamas Kokone up in 4th place. Of course, starting up in 5th, has gained 1 off the very start and still holds 5th place as we manage to make our way through. Steven Vasso just a couple of tenths off the back of Tamas Gal as well. You said gaining and losing time left, right and centre. That is the battery management that we are starting to see up and down this field, because the entirety, bar 2 drivers, are within a second of one another. Will have the entirety of the overtake mode. Alejandro, though, one to keep an eye on, has crossed that 1 second marker in the worst way possible. CC Vaso now trying to go for the move on Tamas Gal, tried around the outside of 9, inside of 10. Beautiful move from Steven Vaso to retake 9th place. But here comes Julian Klaffenbach as well, wanting to get on the back, and Tamas Gal deciding not to fight it. That is the sensible move. He knows the race can be lost in a corner, but it's certainly not won here.
Punchy move from Varso to the outside of turn 9. Had a little look a couple of laps ago to try and make it work. This time does pull it off to the outside of the final corner. That's Luca Rapasa darting and ducking and weaving away with Lucas Beisner. Still side by side. No, the McLaren comes up trumps in the battle with the Ferrari. And look at that. Joe Murphy now nipping at the bit, trying to get through. Also has to back out of that one into turn number 1. Rapasa slightly slow. Maybe we'll just bring the Ferrari of Beisner right up onto the haunches once more of the McLaren on the run into turn 3.
Again, a very sensible decision there from Joe Murphy, just playing the patient game here down under, because you know that if a driver just cuts across your nose, yes, it might not be the best thing to do in race situation, but if you find your race ending in a wall, then you can do all the reporting you want. It's not going to recover your points. When we look to the latter stages of this race, Conrad Bohm as well making a place up for 14th on the grid at the moment. Alex Santana dropping down to 15th, who's not having the best of race start. Started in 12th, now down 3 positions, just ahead of Jack West.
I remember Gabor Johnston started P4, was sideways going through turn 2, down in 18th now as things stand, not particularly close to Marcel Paps just in front. For the first time, perhaps Joris Krozen may be looking in their mirrors as Tycho Hardy, that gap hovering around 0.3 of a second, the smallest that it has been for a few laps. Both Racing Bulls looking strong in second and third with Hardy and Sabrina. Then Kokeni happily sat in fourth ahead of the feisty looking Luca Ripassa, muscled his way past Beisner on the previous lap. Beisner getting it once again through the penultimate corner as Murphy died to the inside, gets a better run through 14, and now they should be eyeball to eyeball over the line. The Ferrari perhaps with a slight edge on straight line speed and battery, but the Audi pulling further alongside. Beisner tries to fight it, but gets a shoulder barge off the road and dips a couple of wheels into the grass. The Audi's through still, side by side. Beisner not giving this one down, but Largo thinking about trying to get involved, having a piece of the action as well. A little bit of contact tyre to tyre at the apex of turn 3 and into 4. The Scarlet Ferrari slips a couple of places. Largo nearly slips on the banana skin left out of 4 as he lights up the rear tyres, but muscly move from Joe Murphy gets himself through, and then Largo picking up the pieces.
That's the exact type of flip-flop racing that we've been talking about when we've been getting prepared for this race. You saw the punchy move into turn 14 wide by Beisner, and then Joe Murphy immediately returning further out of the corner, getting the move made in towards the first corner, which invited Largo through. And speaking of Largo, just behind the action of our shot there, through on Joe Murphy as they made their way in towards turn 9. Stunning from the Alpine car, but they've got a bigger problem at hand. They're 1 second off the back of Luca Rapassa. Yellow flags, the Aston Martin rather, of Marcel Paps finding vengeance through turns 10. He's dropped off the back. He's now joined by Gabriel Quintino as they make their way through. No safety car to allow these cars to try and respond. Luca Rapassa having a go at Thomas Kokene through the final corner, tries the outside line but couldn't make it work. The McLaren will have to go again.
Even overtaking spot that is for Luca Rapassa, diving it to the inside of the penultimate corner, final braking zone of the lap. Conrad Bohm into the pits for Mercedes. Wonder if there was some contact between somebody and Marcel Paps. You can see there were the train tracks of gravel coming out of the gravel trap at the exit of turn 10, and maybe somebody taking a trip through that, and that was what helped Marcel Paps around, or it was just a skill issue for the Aston Martin as he dropped it coming through the chicane. But Luca Rapassa still looking very racy here, now applying the blowtorch to Tamas Kokeni, with the 2 Racing Bulls now 0.7 of a second up the road. It's actually Sabrina maybe just putting his team under a little bit of pressure as well, but we'll see what Rapassa can try. Had a look to the outside of turn 9 on the previous tour. Gap just closing as he inches up to the back of the Cadillac in front. 2 Racing Bulls maybe about to do battle as well, but we retain the status quo. Hardy ahead of Sabrina, Kokeni ahead of Rapassa.
What's happened to Donoso though? Dropped not 1 but 2 positions further back as Tronstos and Santana went through. Luca Rapassa now gets the better of Kokene in towards turn 11, so makes the move on the Cadillac, sent it down the inside and up to 4th place. They find themselves as we see more battling between Santana and Tronstos as well for 15th and 16th on the circuit. So battle to left, right and centre. Varso now trying to go make moves on base in there as well as the Alpine looks around the outside. The final corner, massive kick out for the Ferrari as they try and hold their car stable. Here comes Julian Klaffenbach wanting to try and make it 3 wide potentially towards the first corner. No, backs off sensibly, but still 2 wide between the Alpine and the Ferrari. A tale as old as time. They try to hold it side by side, but it is surely Vasso that has to back out. No, they're still wheel to wheel in towards turns 3 and turns 4. The outside of 3, inside of 4 for Vasso. Still they go wheel to wheel. There's no letting up between the 2 drivers here through 5 and up towards turn 6. Julian Klaffenbach gets involved, now ahead of Vasso. Here comes Tamas Gal as well, who wants to try and get involved. They can't quite find a way past Vasso, but the question will be, in toward the braking zone of 9, can they make a move there?
Vasso getting shuffled back through the pack. Here comes Klaffenbach to the outside, disposes of the Ferrari, backing away as Tamas Galluera to the outside of 9. Just kept in the back pocket of Steven Vaso for the time being. Great racing despite making tyre-to-tyre contact 5 or 6 times as Tycho Hardy still just ahead of his teammate. Luero gets Vaso as well, so out of the top 10, the Alpine.
Oh!
After trying to make up places, but sideways through 11. That is lighting up the rear tyres. The Ferrari of Bison are diving to the inside of 12. There goes Tamas Gal sliding off the road, goes Steven Vaso. Now late into the penultimate corner, opens the door for Victor Valda to try and slide on through as the Alpine bids a retreat to the pit lane, along with Sabrino and Klaffenborg to make their first stops.
Most of the medium tyre runners starting to make their way into the pits around lap 9 or lap 10. We'll see a few trying to go for the overcut as well, as it's all Sabrino, Vaso and Klaffenbach, the three that have pitted this time around. They're joined by the bottom three, Bohm, Santana and Chulki, who have all made their mandatory stops so far in this race. We'll have a quick reminder of tyres when the majority of cars have started to make their pit stops here this afternoon. We'll have that around lap 12, just to remind everybody what tyres are on. Of course, we mentioned it at the start of the race. We spoke about the four that went the different way, but the majority of them starting on the medium compound here, weren't they?
Yes, a lot of white wall, not a lot of white wall tyres, a lot of yellow walled tyres there, signalling the medium compound. Don't expect to see too many soft tyres, despite the lobby reset handing all of those soft tyres back to the drivers after they used them throughout qualifying. But still, Joris Krozen untroubled at the head of the field, although still hasn't managed to break the 1 second gap to Hardy behind, although you find it unlikely that he's going to do that before the pit stops are made. Luca Rapassa now holding third. He's been racing the opening 10 laps so far, muscling his way through, this being his favoured overtaking spot, diving it to the inside of turn 13 and trying to make it work around the final corner and on the run into turns 1 and 2. Largo and Joe Murphy bade adieu from the Albert Park circuit and jump into pit road as well. Alejandro Luera, you can see in the background there, P5. Big gap of 3 seconds to the leading quartet, courtesy of those drivers jumping out of the train and jumping into the pit lane.
Absolutely right. It's not exactly how we'd want this to go. Majority cars who are starting on the medium compounded tyres yet to pit still, and the battles further back I think are going to start to hot up, as you see Francesco Largo making their way out, just peeling in behind Julian Klaffenbach and Conrad Bohm as well, just ahead of Joe Murphy. That was Steven Vaso, a good second and some change off the back of the Audi car that finds themselves in 17th at the moment, so a lot of chopping and changing happening. I know it's a weird situation, isn't it? We don't have safety cars on the roster. Bert Mylander not turning up for work today. Had to hand his sick note in. It's Fabrizio Donoso leaves the session as they're currently running in 10th place. So the Ferrari driver losing connection, which is going to hamper their race tenfold.
Absolutely. Donoso was having some internet troubles once we reset qualifying to head into the race, so not the first time, and that will see the Ferrari lose a lot of time as Klaffenborg disposes of Conrad Bohm. Bohm with an undercut of a couple of laps. Older tyres now dropping behind the Haas of Julian Klaffenborg. Sergio Sabrino, the lead driver to have made a stop, as in comes his teammate Tycho Hardy. Bit of a tail snap into the pit lane. Tamas Kokeni into the pit lane too in the Cadillac, paps through on the disconnected Donoso. Saw a move somewhere else. I think it's Francesco Largo getting stuck in with Conrad Bohm. Yes, in the battle for 15th and 16th. I think the Endstone-based Alpine car just about coming up. Trump's pushing the Silver Arrow down spot.
Certainly looking that way, and the drivers will peel out. Tycho Hardy we're riding on board with. Well, they peel out just ahead of Julian Klaffenbach by the look of it, by the barest of margins. They just survive, not being unencumbered by the Haas outfit in 11th and 12th respectively. Fabrizio Donoso rejoins the session. Sergio Sabrino gets the better of Gabriel Quintino in towards turns 3 and turns 4. The Visa Cash App Racing Bull ahead of the Williams then, as they try and start their charge. This is the lead car effectively in Sergio Sabrino's. More yellow flags in the second sector. The Mercedes of Conrad Bohm going round, who hasn't had the best of races to remember in the opening stages here of VPS. But Sergio Sabrino, your net race leader, the lead driver who's made their mandatory pit stop here this afternoon.
Absolutely. The two racing bulls were separated by nothing, as Sabrino with another spot taking it away from Paps, who is yet to pit. Couple of cars separating the two teammates from Faenza now. Hardy in 10th, I should say, just ahead of Klaffenborg. Then Kokeni. Largo getting through on Donoso as well, who I think is back in the session. Not sure if they're taking control of the car. And in comes the pole sitter and race leader. Led all of the opening 12 laps so far, Joris Kroon, but with the undercut that Sergio Sabrino has pulled, I doubt the Haas will still find themselves in the lead of the race. Rapassa and Bison are following the Haas into pit road, and we will see where our pole sitter emerges. Wait for the flash of white to come through. Not going to see it from that angle, but Sabrino is through. Donoso has retired from the session in the pit lane, but Sabrino now your net race leader. Paps and Quintino yet to stop, and Krozen just gets out ahead of Tycho Hardy.
To be expected after the earlier disconnect, and you know it's kind of a race over, especially if you still got to make that pit stop. No safety nets in terms with the safety car to try and drag you back into it. We've mentioned it time and time again, and on your screens at the moment, these are the current tyre situations that all of our drivers find themselves in. It's everybody bar 2 drivers that are on the hard compound. Larry Tulke with the first 3-second penalty of the afternoon, albeit Julian Klaffenbach having 4 warnings to their name here this afternoon. So interesting to see how all of the warnings are being unencumbered. A lot of them will be for collisions, of course, as they make their way through. Julian Klaffenbach right on the rear of Tycho Hardy, and now in head of Tycho Hardy, and they try and come back at him. Tycho Hardy does come back at Klaffenbach in towards turn 9 and turns 10, and Kokene picks up a 3-second penalty, should I say, for track limit violations. Here comes Rapasa, though, wanting to try and get involved. He'll watch this battle in front. Tycho Hardy sending it deep on Crows, and a little bit of contact between all 3 drivers as they try and figure each other out in towards turns 12, 13 and 14 to close off the 13th lap of racing here in Melbourne. But it is Tycho Hardy right on the back of Gabriel Quintino, who's equally on the back of Paps, and Sabrino, who is still your net race leader.
You just see Sabrino just going past the Qatar Airways hoardings now, but Hardy, Crows and Rapasa into turns 1 and 2. Line astern, 7th, 8th and 9th on the road. Next, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. The Sergio Sabrino comfortable in front at the moment, but it will be the double-edged sword. Got the track position with the undercut, but has got the old hard compound tyres. And can this group chase him down? Going to lose more time in the traffic though. Pap's still out there, yet to stop. Quintino, yet to stop. Aston Martin and Williams, very much a rolling roadblock for this chasing peloton now, as Sabrino with an opportunity to extend his legs here and extend his margin over the group behind.
Especially as everyone behind continues to battle. Marcel Paps will be the cork in the aforementioned bottle for the rest of this field, because the likes of Quintino, Hardy, Crozen will want to try and get past them. Of course, both Quintino and Paps still yet to pit. Tycho Hardy does get the better of Quintino in towards turn 9, a favoured overtaking spot for Hardy. And I think they might try and get the second car, the Aston Martin, in towards turn 11 here. But behind him, Quintino and Rapasa trying to go side by side. Sorry, Crozen and Quintino trying to go side by side. Crozen does get the better, but here comes Luca Rapasa. Likes to move through this section of corners, makes the move through this section of corners, finds themselves up into 8th place as Tamas Gal makes their way into pit road.
Look at this choo-choo train that's forming behind Marcel Paps. Yet to stop is the Aston Martin. They'll pull past the Cadillac of Tamas Gal, who's in the pit lane. Here comes Hardy into turn 1, backs out of that move, as I think that's Kokeni getting the better of the Williams of Gabriel Quintino, who's yet to stop. Largo arriving on the scene also. Paps going defensive. Tycho Hardy looking for the space to try and pull through. As to the inside of turn 3 gets past. Here is Kokeni, ahead of Quintino, ahead of Largo. Now Tycho Hardy leading this train on the brand new hard compound tyres. Joris Crozen bolts behind the Aston Martin. Look at how much speed the Racing Bulls has got compared to the Aston Martin on old tyres. Bit of grass action there for Crozen as he muscles his way past Paps on the run into turn 6. And Rapasa spotted the smallest of gaps on the exit of 7 through 8 to try and force his way past the Aston Martin. The green machine of Paps now going to be vulnerable to the outside on the run into the chicane. Trying to burn the ERS. Paps has a look back down the inside of Crozen. Rapasa cruises around the outside of Paps. It's all back and forth stuff with Hardy still ahead, but 4 seconds now off the back of his team as Kokeni, Largo, Klaffenbach all filing through. Klaffenbach now to the inside of Kokeni, kicking off here in the midfield. The Cadillac holds 7th ahead of the Haas.
So, 15 laps to go when we cross the start-finish line next time around. We're approaching, or just crossed over, half race distance here in Australia. Joe Murphy gets the better of Quintino as well, so strategy will start to come into it. The front two, Alejandro and Jack West, still yet to pit here this afternoon. Marcel Paps as well, yet to make their mandatory stop in towards pit road along with Gabriel Quintino. Lucas sets the fastest lap of the race, 1:18.948 on a set of hard compound of tyres. But this is the battle we will be watching as Tycho Hardy, net race 2 on circuit at the moment, has got an incredibly long train behind them all the way down to 13th place.
Sergio Sabrino here with the golden opportunity, the golden ticket to become the first winner of the VPS Pro Series. 4 seconds the margin he's got over his team. It has got a little bit of a tyre offset as Hardy and Crozen and Rapasa and co behind. They have to try and overcome that margin in the deficit. They can't waste too much time battling as Crozen with the overtake mode will fly past Hardy. Rapasa lets to get involved. 3 wide into the chicane. Rapasa powers past the pair of them. Papaya McLaren rolling strong through the chicane. Crozen back behind Hardy as well. Continue this battle on the run down into 11 as the Haas pulls past the V-Carb. Deja vu from a couple of moments ago. Now Rapasa leading this chasing group with a superb double move around the outside into turn 9.
That was simply spectacular. Lined up the move from so far back. Used the battery the slipstream, the overtake, everything they had at their disposal, and there was a lot of commitment going into that because they knew it was either going to work or they were both ending up at the exit of turn 10 in the grass and the gravel. Tamas Gal starting to set fastest sectors in 13th place. We do see Gabriel Quintino finally making their way in towards pit road as well. So everybody's starting to bunch up once again. Tamas Gal 1.9 off the back of tyre Stephen Varso. We've got Marcel Paps just over a second off the back of Joe Murphy. So what was a close to 10 car train has been split in 3 here this afternoon. We've got smaller pack racing starting to come your way. No, this is not Star Wars. We have got pack racing looking to go till the end.
The Pap still going. Same with Luero and West out front. Rapassa leaking time to Sergio Sabrina. Now 4.5 seconds back as Crozen blasts the battery and flies past the Papaya McLaren of Rapassa, who might be vulnerable here with Tycho Hardy. Not too far back, but a little bit too far back, potentially right into the chicane. Now the second fight of the ERS as Rapassa goes back up to the rear of the Haas of Crozen, but losing it, and Crozen losing it coming out of the chicane. Pole sitter making a mess of it. Big blunder. Crozen pushing too hard and throws himself out of contention to finish on the podium. Blunder, fastest in every qualifying session, led the opening stages, but a big mistake, and that could be criminal for Crozen.
So easily done through turns 9 and turns 10. You just unsettle the car to the slightest amount, touch the gravel on the outside, or maybe just run over the curb a little bit funny. The car will reject it, say no, and well, there you go, Bob's your uncle. We just saw exactly what happened to Joris Crozen. Car at a 90-degree angle compared to where the racetrack continues to flow through to turns 11. We've got Tamas Gal getting the better of Marcel Paps in towards the opening corner, and still Marcel Paps is yet to pit here. Are they going to go for the soft tyres right at the very end, or are they maybe just waiting to cause a little bit of carnage, do you reckon?
Soldiering on. Can't be goal hanging for a safety car, of course, because it has been turned off. So the gap between Sabrina and Rapassa now just starting to come down. Did extend to 5 seconds after Crozen's spin through the chicane. Now 4.6 seconds. I'll be interested to see if we can look at the tyres very quickly to see what the offset is for Rapassa and Hardy. 3 laps for Rapassa, 2 laps for the majority of drivers behind Klaffenburg, same ace tyres as Sabrina. So you would think it's Rapassa with 1 lap fresher hard tyres that's going to have to be the chariot effectively here and try and chase after the runaway V-carb of Sergio Sabrina. Still hovering high 4 seconds at the moment with the battling that's been going on and the strategy car that's been pulled by Sergio Sabrina. He may have accidentally pulled his trump card out here because they're going to have to find a lot of time to try and catch him.
You're absolutely right, and I'm watching on board with the likes of Hardy and Rapassa, and I don't think you can even see our race leader up ahead. Quintino picks up a 3-second penalty for multiple track limits violations. That's the first of theirs for the afternoon. You do see Alejandro Lareo in towards pit road for the Red Bull Racing outfit. That leaves just 1 driver out in the lead that has yet to pit, of course, including Marcel Paps, slightly further down the order, down in 14th at the moment. So 1 McLaren, 1 Aston Martin, 2 British manufacturers that are yet to go for their first pit stop of the afternoon, looking to try and go as long as they can. And I'd argue almost certainly potentially locking in for the soft tyres unless they're really gambling on pushing the mediums to the nth degree.
Problem is, you're losing about 20 seconds on the old tyres staying out this long. That's the issue. So those soft tyres will have to be mighty in the closing stages. Rapassa, half a second quicker than Sabrina on the previous lap. Are we just starting to see the swing, the shift in momentum, the balance of power moving towards Woking as Hardy to the outside with a little bit of battery will dispossess 3rd place on the road for Rapassa. McLaren, Racing Bull, McLaren, your top 4, but Jack West still yet to stop in this race as we approach lap number 20. There is your net race leader, Sergio Sabrino, who has got a 4-second margin now over the group behind. Joris Crozen, fastest in every qualifying session, led the opening 12 laps of this race, but a big blunder coming out of turn 10 sent him sideways and sent him tumbling down to position number 9 as West finally peels off into the pits to lay those tyres to rest.
So as it stands, like you're rightfully saying, 3.9 seconds is the advantage in favour of Sergio Sabrina, but last time around, Tycho Hardy nearly a second quicker than Sergio Sabrina. Just 2 laps is the deficit on those tyres, but that could cause everything. Marcel Paps peeling into pit road and retiring at the exit of, or the end of lap 19. So an interesting strategy there, maybe not exactly how they wanted this race to go. Gabriel Quintino doing the same thing, so that means 3 retirements from this race early on. But up at the front, the podium battle well and truly still on here, because Tycho Hardy, Rapassa, Kokone, Klaffenbach, Largo, Murphy, Crozen, Gal, Varso and Bisoner. Any of those drivers in the top 11 could get a podium here this afternoon.
Absolutely. And we see the hunt very much on now. Hardy losing time, not burning the battery. Rapasa will burn the ERS to take second place back. Deja vu from the previous lap, just roles reversed, as this time it's the McLaren moving forward. That gap extending back to 4 seconds. So Rapasa got to do some work here in the final sector. It's touch and go, isn't it? Because the pace, one lap they take a big chunk out of Sabrina. The next lap, it's fairly equal. And the equilibrium sets out. Kilkenny with a penalty P4 ahead of Claffenborg, Largo, Murphy, Kroes and Gal, like you said, all with an opportunity perhaps in the closing stages to challenge or to finish on the podium, with Stephen Varzo a second and a half further back down the road, battling away with Lucas Beisner.
So 9 laps to go here in Melbourne, Australia, and still half a second quicker was Luca Rapasa than Sergio Sabrino. Slower though was Tycho Hardy by about 0.4 of a second. Stephen Varso picks up a 3-second penalty. Again, for multiple track limit violations, makes him the 5th driver to pick up a penalty for the exact same reasons. We've got Joris Kroesen right on the back of Joe Murphy as we make our way through turns 3 and turns 4. And they have, of course, got Tamas Gal for company. Stephen Varso not far off the back, but that separation, 1.5 seconds or so, could be the lifeline that has been severed for Lucas Bessner.
The gap between Rapasa and Hardy this lap, 0.5 seconds. And I wonder, is Hardy going to be burning the ERS to try and close up? I think Rapasa will hold second place for the time being as they run out of deployment come the end of the straight. That isn't straight because it's got a couple of kinks in it. 3.5 seconds the margin as Beisner into the top 10 at the expense of Varza, who does have a penalty, 2.5 seconds off the back though of the group in front. Gal close to Kilkenny, or Kroesen I should say. I think he had a little look into turn 11 but thought better of it and remains in 9th as things stand. 3.4 seconds the gap between Sabrino and Rapasa. Now it's steadily coming down, but eventually the alarm bells are going to start ringing for this group, but they're not actually going to catch Sabrino. The gap between Hardy and Rapasa, 0.8 of a second, so definitely trying to step on it is Rapasa. Can they catch him in time?
That's going to be the question. 8 to go then in Albert Park, and everybody just starting to play silly games. Alejandro gets the better of Victor down in 12th place, but as it stands, it's still going to be a victory that goes the way of Sergio Sabrino. I wonder how much is left in that tank of that young man as they continue to rip through these streets at just under 1 minute 20 per lap. It is still Luca Rapasa that's 0.5 seconds quicker lap after lap. Hardy as well as Tamas Kokone also 0.5 seconds quicker lap after lap. So doing the maths here, Tom, I don't think Sabrino's got what it has got to try and hold this race lead unless they're holding back some race pace in reserve for the latter stages. We see Joris Kroesen trying to go around the outside of Joe Murphy, does so. Here comes Tamas Gal trying the same thing, does make the same thing. Spectacular move up to 8th place. Joe Murphy caught napping not once but twice.
Not done yet. To the outside of turn 11. Late braking once more for the Cadillac. Has to go the long way round. Made to work hard for a bit of contact. 1 step forward, 1 step back for Kroesen in his attempts to recover from the spin earlier. Back down to position number 8. Gal, superb racing there. Nipped ahead of Murphy and then sliced his way past Kroesen to get up to P7 as the gap out in front for the first time dips below the 3-second mark. Now jumping back over the 3-second mark on the straight, but Rapasa still taking chunks of time out of Sabrino. I think at this stage, whilst the margin you need to gain is less than 0.5 seconds a lap, I think you're still confident. Once it gets to 0.5 seconds a lap and in excess of 0.5 seconds a lap, then maybe they're just going to start to be a little bit more concerned because the tyre offset isn't massive, only 3 laps.
Well, it's interesting. It was only 3 and a bit tenths that lap. Rapasa faster than Sabrino. Same story for Tycho Hardy. It was closer to 4 tenths, but not quite in the ballpark of 4 tenths yet. So there is still work to do for those drivers that are trying to chase down our leader of Sergio Sabrino, who maybe, I don't want to say they've found pace because they're actually slower than they have been over the last few laps. They're finding is the 1 minute 20s per lap. But the likes of Rapasa, Hardy, Kokone, Klaffenbach, if they continue to battle, that is going to only hamper their race results here, and they need as much deficit as they can over the next few laps to try and chase down our race leader. And the old saying goes, it's one thing to catch, it's another to overtake.
And the majority, if not all of these drivers, will have some form of engineers going on. And it'll get to a point, if they aren't looking like they're going to catch Sabrino, that some of the drivers further back are going to go, well, I'm not just going to settle for this. I'm not just going to be dragged up to the leader only for nobody to make any moves. I'm going to have to go for this and try and steal a few places in the closing stages. Joris Kroesen being one of them. Polster made a mistake about 10 or so laps ago. Threw him out of contention for the race win. Can he still muscle his way maybe into the top 5, helped by a penalty for Tamas Kilkenny? Not sure how many warnings certain drivers are on, but when you're pushing the extremities of the track limits, Luca Rapassa in particular pushing very hard at the head of this chasing peloton to try and catch back up to Sergio Sobrino, who's had everything his own way for the last 10, maybe even 12 laps since the pit stops. I think he came in on lap 10, did Sobrino, so will start to hit the tyre drop-off phase earlier than his rivals behind. Will he have enough in hand once or if they catch up to him?
So last time around, just to keep you updated on the delta that is between our front two, it was just over 0.3 of a second between Sobrino and Rapassa. And according to my maths here, Tom, and I'm happy to be corrected, that is not enough for Rapassa to try and chase down our leader of Sobrino as we make our way through lap 24 of 29. We head on to, with 5 to go here in the Australian Grand Prix for the opening round of the Ventauri Pro Series. And once again, a massive shout out to our partners and our sponsors that have made this event possible. And Sim Racing Centre providing a fund for the winners, the top 3 of this event, and Moser Racing as well for giving away an R3 bundle to the race winner, as well as Tiny Graphics, who not only has put together a lot of the graphics you see on your screens at the moment, but of course is doing a personalised graphic for the top 3 in the championship. It literally would not be possible without our lovely people who are making this happen.
A lot of things on offer behind the scenes. We could be seeing the first driver taking a step towards that, with Sergio Sobrino leading the way. Luca Rapassa, 2.3 seconds off the back in a sandwich of racing bulls at the moment. The two breads around him. Kilkenny with that penalty will tumble at least to the back of this group of cars. Lucas Bison, 2.7 seconds back, shouldn't be able to lap that one up freely with the penalty of 3 seconds that Kilkenny's got. But things are quite congested, and if you do get shuffled to the back of the pack in the dice rolls that'll happen in the closing stages, you would imagine potentially Kilkenny could fall back. Here's his teammate Gal to the inside once again, trying to make up for lost time through the 9-10 chicane, but forced off the road. Largo having absolutely none of that one. Joe Murphy with a penalty further back. Crozen now trying to lap this one up on a silver platter. Has to be the long way round into 11. Hasn't worked before. Sliding his way through the apexes. Gal cutting back his Crozen and to the inside of 12. The Haas just in the ascendancy. Will Gal think about sending it to the penultimate corner? No, he will not. And that little mistake there was maybe a little bit too aggressive there from Gal, trying to force his way through. Largo slamming the door in his face, and eventually Largo keeping the position and Crozen picking one up.
You see how easy it is for mistakes just to be tenfolded later down the line. Tamas Gal having a mistake at the exit of 10. He tried an ambitious dive, shall we say, into turn 9, and unfortunately didn't pay off for him. But you spoke earlier about those moments where engineers might be saying, right, we're not going to get onto a podium here. We are just trying to capitalise on as many points as we possibly can pick up over the course of this race so far. And I think that was a move that we saw from Tamas Gal, knowing that we are reaching into that last chance saloon element of the Australian Grand Prix. We're on lap 26 of 29. We'll have 3 to go as we cross the start-finish line next time around. And look at here, Luca Rapassa starting to get within eye shot of Sergio Sobrino, but still 1.8 seconds off the back and still only gaining 3 or so tenths per lap. If you do the maths on that, that's 1.2 seconds. Sorry, no, 1.2 seconds over 4 laps if we include this one. Just 9/10 of a second if we include the 3 that we've got remaining at the end of this. So the deficit, roughly, will be about 7/10 of a second as we cross the line. But with the addition of the boost mode with the final couple of laps, that might help Rapassa if they wish to try and chase down the Thibaut Courtois esports driver, who still leads it after pitting at the exit end of lap 9. Larry Tulke with a 3-second penalty to add to their collection of penalties picked up in the race to a total of 6.
Crozen through on Largo as well. That happened further back in this chasing pack of cars. So Crozen still recovering after the spin 10 or so laps ago, coming out of turn 10, losing the back of the car. Was very much a contender, dominated qualifying, running 6th. That'll become 5th with a penalty for Kilkenny, but still needs to try and muscle his way through. Got himself back within 1 second of his teammate Klaffenborg in front of Bone with another penalty. But for Luca Rapassa, the gap just incrementally coming down still, 1.6 seconds now. He may be heading through the barn doors of the last chance saloon, but he won't be ordering drinks just yet, unless it's labelled champagne, because there's still an opportunity. Like he said, the magic number is 1 second. Dip below that to get that beautiful flash of blue boost on the final couple of laps, and you give yourself an opportunity. As Container leaves the session, 1.6 seconds, just needs to extract a little bit more, perhaps just try and burn maybe a little bit uncharacteristically or unorthodoxly to get inside that 1 second. Give yourself an opportunity, otherwise Tycho Hardy's going to be chomping at the bit to get through. Largo going nowhere but backwards, by the way. In the backer shot you can see through 11, that's Gal to the inside into the braking zone and pushes the Alpine down a further spot.
Trying to make moves at Tamas Gal, and again starting to look maybe a little desperate if we want to categorise it as that into the final stage. We've got 2 to go here in Australia, and it's looking so close between Rapasa and Tycho Hardy up front than last time around. 0.6 of a second, or close to 5.5 of a second was quicker by Luca Rapasa. So now well and truly stepping into the rounds that is possible to try and take the race win here. Now dips within a second, but of course the all-important figure has to be at the exit of turns 13. That is where the overtake detection point is, and the activation point as well, most crucially. As it stands, he will get it on towards that final lap, which is what he might have been building up towards. He'll have to try and keep an eye on Tycho Hardy behind him. Kokone won't be a threat here with that 3-second penalty to the top 3, all within a chance of taking race victory here. Luca Rapasa slowly making inroads, but here comes Tycho Hardy trying to disrupt the party early on through turns 9 and turns 10. Might try and jump the gun, because if he's ahead of Rapasa at that overtake detection point, this could be critical.
Penalty for Gal. That'll be critical. Largo could pick that place up. Another freebie. As this the opportunity for Rapasa as we head towards the final lap of the opening round of the VPS. Season number 1, the Pro Series. Will it be Sabrina? Will it be Rapasa? Will it be Tycho Hardy? 3-lap pressure, hard compound tyres for the Papaya McLaren through the final corner. Half a second the closest these drivers have been since Rapasa came out of the pits. But look at this. Trying to deploy the ERS is Hardy to the inside. Caught me unawares there. Rapasa recharging. Suddenly finds himself on the defensive as Hardy sees the opportunity and nips past the McLaren.
The battle that could have been for P1 is now for P2. Tycho Hardy disrupting the plans of Luca Rapasa through turns 3 and turns 4 out to the exit of the first sector. Just 2 more to go here on the final lap. Tycho Hardy is still 8.5 tenths off the back of Sergio Sabrino up front, but as it stands, it will be a V-Carb 1-2. Not necessarily in the favour that Hardy would have wanted, but the Thibaut Courtois esports driver still reigns supreme here with the penultimate DR, or the straight line mode being activated, sorry. It is Sabrino from Hardy from Rapasa through turns 9 and turns 10. Slide from Sergio Sabrino as the rear tyres start to give up on him.
Sabrina been done a favour here by his teammate Rapasa, trying to recharge into turn 1 so he could go balls to the walls on the final lap. Been given a helping hand by Hardy slipping through, and the duel down under to start this season may have been won with a strategical slide from Sabrino into the penultimate corner we go, running out of tyres, older tyres. The wild card thrown by the V-Carb is going to be a V-Carb 1-2, but Sabrino takes the flag for the first time this season. He is the inaugural winner in round 1. Australia heads the way of Racing Bulls with Sabrino from Hardy. Rapasa had the pace to close him down, but then got balked. He got mugged, didn't he, in the final lap. Pocket pinched from Tycho Hardy. Klaffenborg 4th, header Kilkenny with the penalty. Largo, Gal, Murphy, Beisner and Jack West complete your top 10. Joris Krozen down in 11th, the pole sitter. Stephen Vaso leaving the session, dropping down 2. But Sabrina, we questioned, could he pull it off? He was getting caught very, very quickly, but Rapasa, with the wrong strategy clearly at the start of the final lap, and he might have thrown that one away.
Let's not forget as well, it was Sergio Sabrino, the second driver to make a pit stop here this afternoon, went in at the end of lap 9. And it's done 20 laps on a set of the hard compound tyres, the very same strategy that Julian Klaffenbach opted for and managed to make their way to 4th place. But Sergio Sabrino, what a start that has to be for this career here in the Ventauri Pro Series. As we make our way through a 14-race calendar, we're down 1 round, we've got 13 more to go, but it is TC Esports that start with a victory. Larry Tulke will take the almost beneficial fastest lap at the end. Not necessarily scoring points for, I believe, but they will get a pat on the back for it.
Might have been knocked out of the World Cup a couple of days ago. But Sergio Sabrino giving some nice memories there for Thibaut Courtois and his esports team, taking that one home. Brilliant strategical card played there. Laid his cards down on the table early, went for the undercut over his teammate, over Luca Rapasa, over Joris Krozen as well. Got him the trap position, had 4, I think he had 5 seconds at one point over the group behind. Eventually they stopped fighting amongst themselves and got through. As you can see, Conrad Bowman there. A flat left rear tyre there. Not a lot of air going on as he crawls his way up to the line. We're going to probably use all of the 1 minute and 10 seconds that we've got left on the clock. What a way to start things off. Some great racing out there as well. Luca Rapasa didn't come home with a victory, but got stuck in after an underwhelming qualifying, leaving him 8th on the grid. Could have been 2nd, could have been 1st in the end, having to settle for 3rd. Klaffenborg in 4th. And you look down at Joris Krozen in 11th and think what might have been. Tamas Gal with a penalty late on, what might have been as well. Could have been inside the top 5, could have been 4th potentially, with penalties for Kilkenny and Largo as well.
Certainly looking that way as we still see Conrad Bohm just dragging that Mercedes car, kicking and screaming up towards the finish line. It is still yellow flags in the third and final sector, as to be expected, as Francesco Largo leaves the session. And there we go, across the line is the Mercedes car. Finally gets across the line. That's worthy of maybe a pass in the back from the Mercedes team. But what a win for Sergio Sobrino to kick off the series, and one that I think they will remember. It's worth looking as well. Conrad Bohm took those hard tyres 22 laps. That was the difference between a puncture and not puncturing for Sergio Sobrino, who will stand atop our podium. The Spaniard takes the first victory.
Playing 1-0 up in the football and 1-0 up here as well. First victory of the season, heading to Espanyol. And that is a superb performance. The awards handed out. We know the race winner. Fastest lap went to Torquay. We saw driver of the day, most overtakes for Klaffenburg, and cleanest driver as well. Heads the way of Sergio Sobrino. Well, it's a V-carb 1-2. Third on the grid to first. Second to second for Hardy. Rapassa, good recovery. Julian Klaffenburg from 17th on the grid. Knocked out in Q1. Finds a way brilliantly to finish in P4 ahead of Kilkenny, Largo, Gal, Murphy, Bison and Jack West from 18th up to 10th with an alternate strategy. I think he was on the soft tyres at the end. Joris Krozen, the pole sitter, dropping down. Varda Chonstos started 4th, half spun coming out of turn 1. That was really the end of his challenge. Whereas Santana, Tulkeep Bohm and Varzo, Pabst, Quintino and Donoso failing to see the checkered flag. I think Varzo in the end was 13th because he left the session. You can see there 14.8 seconds off the pace. Was, I think, 13th in the end. But what a start that was. We've set the bar, haven't we, with that one? Some really good racing. Hopefully next time we don't just smash straight into it and we can clear it even further.
Absolutely. It is going to be a thrilling season as we make our way through. And whilst we have a brief pause, we'll have interviews in the next few moments because there is going to be a thrilling calendar. Well, to remind yourselves, if you have just tuned in, you saw the race, you saw the victory for Sergio Sobrino. This is where our calendar takes us for the rest of the season. Of course, we head to China next time out, which will be thrilling. I'll try and say that with a straight face, with a long straight down towards the final few corners. The opening sector, that snail section in the opening few runs, from what I've heard and what I've seen, should give us some really good racing this generation.
Always a difficult one on tyres, China, as well. We know that the soft tyres in particular are much better than they were in the 25 cars and the ground effect cars. I doubt we'll see anybody using the soft compound tyres in the race because they're fairly useless. Should be medium, hard, medium, depending on what way round you go. Silverstone follows that one with a recharging station of Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. Austria should be good fun. And then we have a week break, a first of our 2 week breaks. You could call them our hydration breaks midway through. I think that's the 5th time we've dropped that into the broadcast. We return for Suzuka on the 18th of August, then head to Spa, Bahrain and Texas. And then after another recess of a week, Saudi Arabia. I'm very much looking forward to that one at the end of September. Mexico City, the longest straight, I think, on the calendar, that main straight. If it's not, it's very close. And the battery's going to be drained very, very quickly. Brazil, the hallowed Brazilian bitumen of Interlagos. And then Abu Dhabi do, as you said it, to round us off. Fred Flintstone style. Hopefully, we won't be having anyone ending up in a stone-wheeled car.
Fingers crossed. Well, shall we kick off some interviews? We'll go from, I was going to say last to first. We haven't got Sobrino in the waiting room quite yet, so we will start with Luca Rapassa, of course, finishing up in P3. And Tom, I'll let you take it away.
I will. Luca, exciting race for yourself, I think it's fair to say. Getting stuck in, some nice moves early on. When you look at the tactics for what you're trying on the last lap, do you think maybe you missed a trick with the way you approached it, though?
Probably a little bit. I was just a bit disappointed because I feel like the pace was really good. I feel like I was the fastest on the track compared to the people I was racing against. So that was good. And then onto the last lap, I was just trying to save up a little bit of battery because I knew in the slow bit in Sector 1, I could close up really a lot to Sergio because of the better tires and stuff. But then Taiko decides to go for it on me in turn 1. And I think we both lost an opportunity for the win there.
When you look at the strategy department, obviously Sobrino with that 3-lap undercut, you had the tyre offset. Did you expect to catch him a little bit quicker than you potentially did? Obviously, there was some battling going on, especially right at the start of that final stint. But did you think maybe you'd get there before the penultimate lap?
When he pit and I knew I was going to pit my lap, yes, I would have caught him. But then Marcel Pops, who is not his teammate, is just gonna hold him up, and we lost like 2 seconds there. And then I don't know what Joris and Taiko were doing, but that cost me battery, probably cost me a second and overall pace as well. So it really didn't, like, the luck wasn't on my side today. Like, I feel like if Marcel just didn't play his little game, and Taiko or Joris played it smart, we would have caught like 2 or 3 laps earlier, and then the race would have been completely different.
And just before I hand over to TK, just a question about the racecraft element of it, because we saw you and a lot of other drivers actually going for those moves down the inside into the penultimate corner. Was that predetermined plan that was going to be an opportunity maybe to try and sneak some places, almost pocket pinch a couple of drivers to get your way up the field?
Yeah, it's like out of the 90-degree right, it's just you stay on non-battery so you can, regen as much as possible, or you go like quickly to medium, and which means you're basically you don't have any battery power like out of the right-hander. So if you just go to medium real quick, you have a lot more power, and then you can just launch it up the inside and surprise the other guys.
Absolutely. And Luca, looking ahead to next week, of course, a fantastic victory, getting a podium in the first race out. As we head to China, what are going to be the kind of main challenges that you'll face there? Of course, that long straight is going to be a rather daunting aspect, but a lot of overtaking opportunities, maybe in the first and second sector.
To be honest, the battery is quite a lot easier in China than you might expect, because the turn 1 to like sector 1 is one big recharge zone, and then the hairpin out of sector 1. So I think it's either going to be quite hard to overtake because everyone will be able to regen a lot. Same for the end of sector 2, start of sector 3, you can regen there as well. Or there's going to be a lot of chaos. So I'm not really sure, but I reckon it's going to be a good race.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for having a bit of a chin wag with us, Luca. 3rd place, well done on your podium, and a very nice platform to build on throughout the season.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca. Well, we move from Luca Rapassa to the driver that finished 2nd, I believe. We have got Julian Klaff, but we're going to bring Taiko Hardy in. Taiko, a race that looked like a bit of a grind in the second half for a lot of you, just trying to catch up to Sergio Sobrino after he pulled that undercut. But from your perspective, how do you think the race went?
Yeah, I mean, after we lost all the time in the pit stops with people, quite clearly intentionally holding us up. We lost like 3 seconds, and at one point the gap to Sergio was 5 seconds, and then everyone started blasting the battery, and I did the same. And I was just not gonna be losing out in that. If you get overtaken, you're on no battery, you're just a sitting duck. So I was just trying to stay ahead at all costs, which I did. Then the end of the race, I just let Luca just pull me along. I was hoping we would catch a little bit earlier, but yeah, I saw the opportunity on the last lap, and I was not going to finish P1 anyway, so I was going to take the P2 happily after what happened.
With the way that pack racing works, just explain to people how challenging it can be when you've got 3 or 4 drivers fighting very closely, all of you burning your battery, and then you've all got no ERS left, and then other people come out of the blue as well. How difficult is that dynamic to try and manage?
I think in this game, just starting at the front is such a huge advantage, because when people behind you are deploying to overtake you, you have to deploy to defend, and then if you're not careful, you're just going to get doubled by the guy who's waiting behind. So it's a huge strategic game. It's very difficult because it's really easy to deploy the battery slightly wrong and lose 4 positions if you're not careful. Well, it's maybe a bit exaggerated, but definitely losing 2 positions it's quite easy if you do it wrong. So it's just super difficult.
Absolutely. And looking ahead to the rest of the season as well, it's tough to say, because you finished P2 is a fantastic result in itself. What do you change heading into next week? Obviously, as we head to China, you're leading the Constructors' Championship with your teammate Sergio Sobrino. But if you wanted that top step of the podium, which I'm sure you absolutely do, what has to change in the next few weeks?
Not a lot. I think in qualifying, the pace was strong. Joris was just really, really fast throughout every session. I think it was going to be hard to beat him. was possible, but I mean, I would have had to absolutely nail the lap. I think especially it's going to be important to get through Q1 or Q2 with one set. I mean, I was on the first run in Q1, I lost for back in the final sector, which basically cost me that opportunity. So I was very happy to still be P2 in the end with only one run to go for it. So I mean, I don't think a lot has to change. I was happy with the race pace. I don't think other drivers were happy with how I managed the race, but in the end I finished P2, so I take the points. So yeah, I mean, I won't change a lot. I felt good, and yeah, we'll just try to get one position better next time.
Smashing stuff. Go one better, I think. The metaphor to take through. So thank you for chatting with us, Tycho. Big congratulations as well on your second place and a good start to the season.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanking you. Well, I still don't think we're going to get Sergio Sabrina in.
He said
I would quite like to have a chat. He's watching Spain. Is it half time? It is half time.
At
so that's
the moment. Yes.
But I would quite like to have a chat with Julian Klaffenburg, who's in there.
Should we drag him? I don't know if he's expecting us to drag him in. Should
I
we
don't
drag
know.
him in?
Julian, if you're watching, we're going to drag you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Julian, welcome in.
Oh,
17th
hello.
to P4. I mean, not necessarily. Well, the interviews we were only supposed to be talking to the top 3, but really wanted to have a chat with you about how that race went. Must have been pretty exciting from your point of view.
Yeah, nice to be here. Actually, I didn't expect to that you guys moved me up here, but I was
You were
just
in the
having a
waiting
chat
room.
to the other people. Yeah, I mean that's true. Nah, I mean it was an exciting race, obviously, with not a good quali. I mean, I've been ill for the past 3 days, so I barely could prepare quali. So just started practicing today pretty much, and then I just wanted to have some fun in the race because quali didn't go well. And yeah, we quite perfectly executed the whole race, I would say, from lap 1 to the strategy, and then trying to keep the tires alive. So yeah, I mean it was a quite decent comeback there. So yeah.
When you have an underwhelming qualifying like that, what was the game plan going into this? Because I imagine you thought the pace was probably a bit better than 17th on the grid showed. So how was it like trying to manage getting through the field effectively in those early stages, picking up, when the pit stops were going to come in, for example, as well, and getting that absolutely spot on?
Yeah, I mean, we knew that from the past couple of races, from the test races also we had here, VPS, that hard medium doesn't quite work that well on this game, and then we just said we try medium hard undercut and see what's gonna happen, and we actually got overtakes, and then the pit lap pretty much perfect with being low on battery, regaining that during the pit stop, and then being able to push again on the out lap. And that helped us out quite well, undercutting some people then and staying in the position. So yeah, we knew that the pace should be fast enough to be with the top guys. So that's why we kind of went for this strategy.
I don't have any questions for Julian. I just want to say massive congratulations. It's a fantastic comeback in the race, and one you should absolutely be proud of heading into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the race, as I said, after that bad qualifying, but it was very compromised, obviously, with being ill for the past few days. But I will obviously for the next race try to be better again and good in quali, and then be up there with the other guys.
Well, onwards and upwards, that's the prerogative going forward. And the game gave you drive of the day. I think myself and TK will wholeheartedly agree with that one. Excellent drive from yourself. Looking forward to what you can produce maybe when you're 100% next week.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Julian. Well, we've spoken to 3 drivers.
Yeah.
Not quite first, second, and third. We've gone second, third, and fourth because if you watch me and TK, we don't do things we don't do things normally. We do things in our way and our way only. But before we wrap up, summarising the race, what are your final closing thoughts? Really exciting one to start us off, and I think it sets us up really nicely.
The Aussie antics are amazing. That is how I'm going to have the baseline. It was a fantastic race. Australia always provides some great entertainment. Some really unfortunate moments for the likes of, obviously, our pole sitter who had that early spin, Joris Krozen. They probably, on a good day, should have been up on the podium there. But what a race for Sabrina. It looked dominant from start to finish, and they just never looked back.
Yeah, did really well to manage that second stint, when you have the pressure of everybody chasing you down. Joris Krozen taken out of the taken out of contention with that spin. You've got Rapace, who was very quick, especially in the last 5 laps. Clearly held something back, or whether it was just Sabrina's tyres finally hitting that little bit of a cliff. But really interesting strategical race to start us off. And I think that sets us up, as I said, nicely for Shanghai in 7 days' time. Looking forward to that one massively. But before we head out, make sure you check out all the VPS Pro Series and Ventauri Esports social media. I completely forgot the term there. The social media accounts, make sure you get involved in those for the updates that will be coming thick and fast. And TK, linked in the description, your socials. But where can people find you?
They call me TK on pretty much every single social media, sometimes with an underscore in front of it because I'm really original like that.
Really original, of course. And if you're interested in what I'm doing, wilco.coms on Instagram and TikTok. But for everybody that's still here, thank you for turning up. It's been an absolute pleasure to bring this race to you, and it'll be a pleasure to bring this to you over the next 15 weeks or so. But until 7 days' time, we blast from, not too far in fairness, down under Australia. We head to China for Shanghai, round number 2. Will it be Sabrina again, or will somebody else emerge from the pack? Take it off him. We'll see you in 7 days' time.